Chapter 13. The next day, the two of them woke up early and hurriedly washed up. They had a light breakfast before leaving. Sang-won did not bring any of the maidservants from Ning Garden. She instructed Xing-ji to look after the courtyard and house. She only brought Lu-ya back home. Shi Fengju also made some arrangements. He brought along his two trusted manservants, Chong-hwan and Shi-ming, as well as his trusted subordinates, Li-yen and his wife, and Song-hee and his wife, who worked in the outer courtyard. They were all honest and cautious people. 2 carriages were prepared. Shi Fengju and Sang-won rode in one, followed by the 2 manservants on horseback. The husband and wife would drive the carriage while the woman and Lu-ya would ride in the other. The gifts they brought were all piled up in the carriage that Lu-ya and the others were in. Before leaving, Shi Fengju glanced at Sang-won to ask for her opinion. Sang-won gave him a faint smile and nodded. Shi Fengju waved his hand and ordered everyone to get on the carriage and prepare to leave. The carriage drove away from the second gate and the sound of the wheels gradually faded away. Gu Fengzi slowly stood up from behind a thick pomegranate bush with a gloomy expression. With a snap, she broke the branch in her hand and crushed the dark green leaves in her palm. Her snow-white palm was stained with deep green stains. Gu Fengzi did not care about the snow-white skin in her palm. She glared in front of her with hatred, as if she was about to spit fire. That woman, her cousin accompanied that woman back to her home. Although she knew that this was unavoidable, she still felt sullen in her heart. The faint smile on Sang-won's face and the warmth in her eyes flashed through her mind, and Gu Fengzi's heart became even more tangled. She thinks too highly of herself, she thinks too highly of herself. Gu Fengzi muttered. She smiled self-deprecatingly and shook her head with a sigh. I really asked for it. Why did I come here to see? What is there to see? Seriously. The carriage exited the city gate. Through the gauze curtain, they could vaguely see the distant mountains. Sang-won's grip on the handkerchief loosened and loosened several times. Her body moved gently from time to time, as if she couldn't suppress the excitement in her heart and had to move to vent it out. Shi Fengju couldn't help but look at her. Sang-won smiled embarrassedly. I'm a little nervous thinking that I'm going to see my brother, sister-in-law, nephew, and niece. Shi Fengju burst out laughing. How many days has it been since you last saw them? What's there to be nervous about? Sang-won was stunned when she heard that. She lowered her eyes and forced a smile. Yes, it's only been a few days. Haha. A few days? In his eyes, and in the eyes of everyone else, only a few days had passed. But to her, it had been several years. She had not seen her family for several years, and she was about to see them again. How could she be nervous and expectant? The simple and honest elder brother, the fierce and straightforward elder sister-in-law, the lovable nephew and niece, were they still the same as when they first parted? Were they still as close to her as they were before she was married? Yes, they must be. Because all the unhappiness had not yet begun, and it would never begin. Sang-won's heart was in turmoil, and her breathing was tight. Don't worry, there's still more than 4 hours to go. If you're tired, close your eyes and rest. Shi Fengju stopped joking after hearing her words. Perhaps this was how a newly married woman felt. He was very understanding. Sang-won's thoughts were in a mess. She closed her eyes and organized her thoughts. She nodded and closed her eyes, leaning against the wall of the carriage. When it was almost noon, the carriage passed through Willow Town and arrived at Sai Village on the outskirts of Willow Town. Sang-won's family was at the east end of Sai Village. The Shi family's carriage was grand and eye-catching. The wheels were half the height of a person, and the body of the carriage was newly painted. The curtains were hung with dark red flowers, and the 4 sides were adorned with golden tassels. Beautiful jade beads hung from the 4 corners, and the carriage was pulled by tall and strong horses. It attracted a lot of attention as soon as it entered the village. Although there were only 2 carriages, it was enough to make the villagers of Sai Village jealous. Looking at the carriages heading towards the Sang family, they could not help but sigh. This was indeed the Shi family of Qingzhou. Amazing. There were also many children jogging and laughing as they followed behind the carriage, happily watching the fun. The carriage stopped at the entrance of the Sang family's house. Lu Ye, dressed in new clothes and hair accessories, opened the curtains and jumped down, rushing forward to help Sang Wan. The eyes of the daughters-in-law and maidservants who were watching the show lit up. Isn't that Lu Ye? Look at her clothes and the flowers in her hair. I've never seen anyone so beautiful. The Shi family is so rich, even a girl's clothes are better than ours. Yes, I didn't think so before, but now it seems that this girl is beautiful. The Sang family's Wan Nyang is so lucky. That's right, endless riches and honor. Even the Sang family will benefit from it. The Sang family is rich now. In the midst of the discussion, Sang Wan had already gotten down from the carriage, attracting everyone's attention. She was dressed in a bright red embroidered peony jacket, with a 2-inch wide golden embroidered hem, and a red date 8 treasures running rabbit double happiness skirt. Her figure was graceful and elegant, graceful and dignified. Her hair was combed into a peony hairstyle, and the pearls and emeralds on her glossy hair bun were dazzling. Everyone felt that it was beautiful, but they couldn't recognize what kind of jewelry it was. Everyone recognized the gold ruby earring on her ear, which was bigger than a thumb. It swayed gently with her movements, and was particularly eye-catching. The door opened with a creak, and Sang Wan's elder brother, Sang Hong, came out to welcome her. Behind him, his children, Sang Quan and Sang Nuan, were held by Mother Su on either side. "Ah Wan, you're back." Sang Hong rubbed his hands and smiled as he stepped forward, appearing somewhat restrained. Sang Wan smiled and called out, "Big brother." Her eyes were hot as she quickly stepped forward, leading Shi Fengju to meet her brother. Shi Fengju cupped his hands and called out, "Big brother." Sang Hong quickly returned the greeting. Sang Quan and Sang Nuan were the closest to Sang Wan. Although their aunt was dressed in riches, her attitude was still warm and gentle, and they happily called out, "Aunt." The two siblings broke free from Mother Su's hands and flew towards Sang Wan. Sang Wan hugged each of them with one hand, and lowered her head to talk and laugh softly. Sang Hong coughed and was about to lead his sister and brother-in-law into the courtyard when he heard a middle-aged man's rough voice shouting loudly to drive away the crowd. Hey, what are you all doing here? Go, what's there to see? Don't offend the guests. Go. Quickly go, disperse." Everyone's eyes were filled with disgust and shame. Tisk. With a shout, they dispersed. Those who saw their own children did not forget to pull their children away. In the blink of an eye, the Sang household's entrance was empty, and everyone was gone. Sang Wan's brows unconsciously wrinkled slightly, and her heart turned cold. Second uncle and second aunt are here. Before Sang Wan could react, second uncle Rio Kuwabaira had already stepped forward and enthusiastically shook Shi Fengju's hands. He bowed and smiled like a flower. This must be our Sang household's new son-in-law. What a talented and promising young man. Those country bumpkins don't know the rules and disturb you. Son-in-law, please be magnanimous and don't lower yourself to their level. Come, quickly follow me into the house. I've specially prepared some good tea to entertain you. Son-in-law, please. As Rio Kuwabaira spoke, he reprimanded his daughter-in-law, Li, who had already struck up a conversation with the two women from the Yen and Song He's families. "Why are you still standing here in a daze? Quickly invite the guests into the house and properly entertain them." It's not that I'm so happy to see our Wan Nyang that I've become muddle-headed. Sisters-in-law, please. Brothers, please go into the house and rest as well. Li clapped her hands, her sharp voice filled with enthusiasm. Shi Fengju's ears were filled with Rio Kuwabaira and his wife's loud words. His heart was filled with disgust, and his brows furrowed slightly. His hands were tightly held by Rio Kuwabaira, and it was extremely sticky and uncomfortable. He tried to break free a few times, but he couldn't use force to shake it off. He couldn't help but feel helpless and amused at the same time. He could only force a smile on his face and let the thunderous enthusiasm reverberate in his ears. In reality, he had no idea what they were talking about. Sang Wan secretly complained. She glanced at her eldest brother several times, but her eldest brother only stood to the side and moved his lips. He couldn't stop second uncle at all. Seeing second uncle and second aunt singing the same tune and leading Shi Fengju and the rest to their house, Sang-won became even more anxious. She clearly remembered that the conflict in her previous life was caused by this. When uncle and auntie led Shi Fengju and the rest to their house, they even moved all the gifts inside. When sister-in-law came back and saw the situation, she was so angry that she immediately scolded Sang-won for being heartless and forgetting who was the one who sent her off to get married. Second uncle and second aunt weren't easy to deal with either. They didn't back down and quarreled with sister-in-law. Sang-won was anxious, ashamed, and shedding tears of shame. The Shi family stood at the side and watched the show without saying a word. Second uncle and second aunt are going in the wrong direction. Our house is here. Sang-won couldn't wait any longer. She took 2 steps forward and raised her voice. At the same time, while Ryo Kuwabara was in a daze, Shi Fengju forcefully withdrew his hand and hurriedly came to Sang-won's side. He quickly smiled and said, "Then let's go in." Ryo Kuwabara and Lee looked at each other and their faces sank. "Won Yang, aren't you being too distant with your words? What do you mean by your house and our house? Aren't you my, Ryo Kuwabara's, niece? Can't I properly entertain my own niece-in-law? Your father has passed away. As your uncle, I have to stand up for you. Don't be so modest. Come, let's go to uncle's house." Ryo Kuwabara acted like an elder. He stared kindly at Sang-won, blaming her for not being sensible and being distant with him. Sang-won sneered. When had this uncle of hers ever taken care of her and her siblings? It was more like adding insult to injury. An uncle of hers was complaining to her and her siblings. He complained that their father didn't have the life of an official, yet he insisted on standing up for them and squandering their family fortune. He deserved to have a short life. He even scolded her third brother, Sang Yufei. Wasn't it enough for him to be taught a lesson by his father? He might as well come back to farm and have a bowl of rice to eat. He said something like, "If you don't listen to me, I don't care if you starve or freeze to death in the future. Don't come looking for me." It wasn't easy for her second brother to take in a few students to teach. The annual tuition was only that little, yet he insisted on taking half of it. He insisted that he was the one who found the students for her second brother. Second aunt wasn't idle either. She went around bad-mouthing her, mocking her, telling everyone that the Shi family would kick her out sooner or later. Someone like her still dared to dream of being the Shi family's young mistress. She should look at herself in a mirror. Chapter 14. Her eldest brother was honest and was not good with words. Furthermore, he was facing his own uncle, so how could he go against him? If her eldest brother did not say anything, her second brother who was still in the academy could not say anything either. If he were to be accused of disrespecting elders, he would not be able to stay in the academy anymore. Sang-won felt that if that were to happen, the person who would accuse her would most likely be her second uncle. As for Sang-won herself, as an unmarried lady, she could only endure the scolding and would not have the right to defend herself. Fortunately, there was still a sister-in-law in the family. Her sister-in-law was bold and meticulous, upright and outspoken. Although it was not convenient for her to go against her second uncle and second aunt, she would often make them suffer in secret. With her around, even if her second uncle and second aunt were to gossip, they could not really do anything to her family. Now that the Shi family had honored the marriage agreement and welcomed her into the family, her second uncle and second aunt's faces immediately changed completely. "How can that be?" Sang-won smiled. "I did not dare to trouble second uncle and second aunt in the past, and now I dare not. Niece, you are still treating me as an outsider. What trouble? We are all family. Second uncle has never found it troublesome. Let's go, let's go." Ryo Kuwabara's thick eyebrows raised as he spoke without a hint of red in his face. "That's right. Second aunt still has many things to tell you. Your mother passed away early, and as your aunt, I have to worry about her. Second aunt has always doted on you since you were young. You were just short of staying in second aunt's stomach for 10 months. Li's face was filled with love and pity. Sang Wan was so angry that she felt dizzy. To think they dared to say that. Even Sang Wan could not bear to listen to those words. She pouted and made a face at Li before hiding behind Sang Wan and saying, "Second aunt doesn't dote on auntie, and you even called auntie a jinx. The aunties in the village say that jinx is a scolding word. You little brat, what nonsense are you spouting?" Li's face turned red as she glared at Sang Quan. "No manners. How can you speak to your second aunt like that? Who taught you that? Ahiro, you have to teach this child. When he grows up, he will be amazing." Rio Kuwabara also stared. When Nanny Sue saw them, she hurriedly called out, "Little young master, little Mississippi." She stepped forward to hold the Sang siblings' hands and bent down to whisper something to them. Sang Hong frowned slightly and smiled at Rio Kuwabara. "Yes." Sang Wan was angry, annoyed, and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She curtsied to Rio Kuwabara and Li and said firmly, "Second uncle and second aunt, please go back first. Sang Wan will definitely pay you a visit later. Now, I have to go back to my brother and sister-in-law's place to pay my respects to my father and mother's memorial tablets. I hope second uncle and second aunt can understand." After that, Sang Wan turned to Luya and said, "Are you still a guest? Hurry up and invite the two sisters-in-law in. Chong Huan, move everything inside and park the carriage." "Yes, young mistress." Luya couldn't wait to hear this and agreed. She smiled and led Li Yan's and Song He's family's gifts inside. She glanced at Li with the corner of her eyes. Chong Huan, Li Yan, and the rest saw that their master had tacitly agreed and moved the bags of gifts into Sang Hong's house. Sang Wan said that she would pay them a visit later and brought up her deceased parents. Rio Kuwabara and his wife had nothing to say and could only watch. Seeing countless gifts being moved in, Li felt an itch in her heart. She smiled and said, "Wan Nyong is right. Then let's go in, let's go in. Aya, when will we be able to move all these things? Old man, let's help." She then walked towards the carriage. "How would I dare to trouble second uncle and second aunt to do this kind of work that should be done by servants? Second uncle and second aunt should go back first. We'll be there in a while. We're still waiting to drink second uncle's good tea." Sang Wan smiled. Li stopped in her tracks and couldn't help but straighten her back. Rio Kuwabara's bright eyes also dimmed. That's right, those people were servants. She was Sang Wan's aunt. Naturally, she was also the master. How could a master do the work of a servant? A master should maintain the dignity of a master. In any case, Sang Wan and the rest couldn't go empty-handed, right? Humph, let's see if she's stingy and willing to give away some good things. If it's too little, I'll just ask Sang Hong for more later. They were the elders. It would be a waste not to take it. It's only right for them to take it. Hee, then we'll go back first. You have to hurry. Although Li was a little unwilling, she didn't follow them. Li said sourly, "That sister-in-law of yours is too much. She clearly knew that you were coming back today but didn't say anything. Instead, she went out." "Aya, I said too much. Young master, please don't take it to heart. That person has always been like this. She only cares about herself and no one else. Her heart is barely passable. Let's go in." Sang Wan didn't have the slightest intention to continue talking with Li. She pretended not to hear and looked at Shi Fengju with an apologetic look. "I'm really sorry." Sang Hong accompanied them into the courtyard and said, "Your sister-in-law was originally waiting at home. When she heard from Dahai next door that our family's crops were eaten by the Li family's cows, she hurriedly went out. You guys sit for a while. I'll go find her to make lunch. Big brother, sit down. Let Luya go and take a look. I'm sure my sister-in-law will be back soon." Sang Wan said and glanced at Shi Fengju. Shi Fengju nodded and smiled. "It's still early. There's no hurry. Sit down first." Shi Fengju secretly sized up Sang Hong. After what happened just now, he wasn't surprised that Sang Hong, a man, was waiting at home while his wife, a woman, went out to deal with things. How could such an honest person open his mouth to reason with others? What kind of person was his wife? He thought about the confrontation between Sang-won and her second uncle and aunt. She seemed to be gentle with a gentle smile on her face, but in reality, she didn't back down at all. She used a soft knife without batting an eyelid. This family was quite interesting. Please. Sang-hong smiled and didn't insist anymore. He raised his hand and gestured for Shi Fengju to sit down. Mother Su coaxed the two little ancestors to go play in the courtyard and hurriedly came up to serve tea. Sang-hong politely greeted Shi Fengju. My house is simple and crude. Please forgive me if there's anything wrong. Shi Fengju hurriedly said, We're family. Big brother, you don't have to be so polite. After drinking a mouthful of hot tea, Shi Fengju finally felt that his ears and eyes were clear. Without the noise and unbearable enthusiasm, he felt at ease. Luya didn't say anything and went out to find Feng. Chong Huan and the others went to park the carriage and unload the horses. Li Yan's family and Song He's family sat in the side room, drinking tea and eating melon seeds as they rested. The people Shi Fengju picked were indeed steady people. At this moment, each of them was doing what they were supposed to do, as if nothing had happened. Even the two daughters-in-law of Li Yan's family and Song He's family, who were eating melon seeds and chatting, didn't treat what had just happened as a pastime. Big brother, Dalong, please sit down. I'll go to the kitchen to see what needs to be done. Sang-won smiled. How can you do that? Sang-hong was shocked and hurriedly said with a smile, Your sister-in-law will be back soon. The chicken and fish have been killed in the morning, and the meat has been washed and cut. Later, go to the vegetable garden and pull out 2 stalks of vegetables. Just let your sister-in-law do it. You'd better prepare. After burning incense for father and mother, you'll go to second uncle and second aunt. After all, they're elders. I know, big brother. Sang-won smiled. Second uncle and second aunt had the status of elders. Even if they didn't like it, they couldn't do anything. If they wanted to care about this, they wouldn't be able to live anymore. I know what I'm doing, she said and was about to change clothes and go to the vegetable garden. Mother Su saw this and hurriedly said with a smile, My young lady, you're the new grand aunt today. You can't do this work. Otherwise, the villagers will talk about uncle and young mistress. Why don't you help look after little master and little miss? I'll go. Sang-hong also hurriedly agreed. Sang-won smiled and nodded. She didn't insist and went to the courtyard to play with Sang-kwon and Sang-nwon. Won-young is a very hard-working girl. She rarely has time to rest. As her elder brother, I'm useless and let my younger siblings suffer a lot. Brother-in-law, I'll leave my younger sister to you. Please take good care of her. She's a good girl. Sang-hong sighed softly and said to Shi Fengju. For some reason, Shi Fengju's heart suddenly felt heavy. It was as if he had done something wrong. He actually felt guilty for no reason. Big brother, don't worry. I'll take good care of Won-young. I won't let her suffer. Shi Fengju was a little flustered as he avoided his brother-in-law's gaze and said with a forced smile. Then I'm relieved. Sang-hong was an honest person. He couldn't tell whether the words were perfunctory or sincere. In addition, he had a good impression of Shi Fengju. When he heard those words, his face immediately revealed a smile that came from the bottom of his heart. He nodded and said happily, No wonder father was full of praise for your Shi family when he was alive. He even said that the Shi family was different from other families. They would never do things like despising the poor and favoring the rich. They would never break an engagement. So it was true. With your words, as the elder brother, I can finally answer to my parents who passed away. Shi Fengju saw that Sang-hong's eyes were shining from smiling. He awkwardly smiled and humbly greeted him. Cold sweat seemed to have formed on his forehead. Our family's new grand-aunt is back. Kiki, I'm sorry for missing her. The door to the courtyard was pushed open with a creak. A young married woman walked in. Her hair was tied into a flat bun with a silver hairpin. There were 2 red silk flowers the size of copper coins on her temples. She was dressed in a red printed gown with narrow sleeves and a skirt of the same color. She had a tall figure, thin shoulders, a long face, and a pair of eyes that were neither big nor small under her willowy eyebrows. They were bright and clear. Her whole person exuded a spirit, capable, and efficient aura. Sang Quan and Sang Nuan saw her and called out, "Mother," before running towards her. "Sister-in-law is back." Sang Wan also smiled and went forward to welcome her. "We're all family." "Sister-in-law, you're making me embarrassed." She then asked if the matter had been resolved. Sang Wan was secretly puzzled. Although her sister-in-law usually treated her well, it was never to the point of being so affectionate and welcoming with a smile. Because of her marriage with the Shi family, she was going to be a young mistress in the future. Her big brother pitied her and never allowed her to work in the fields. He also did not allow her to easily touch the household chores. Only when they were extremely busy would they reluctantly agree to let her do some of the more delicate chores. Although her sister-in-law did not say it out loud, she was still unhappy and would sometimes show a cold face. Her sister-in-law was different from her second aunt. She was not someone who would take advantage of the situation and favor the rich. There must be a reason for her change. Sang Wan could not help but look at Luya and raised her eyebrows in doubt. Chapter 15. Luya bared her teeth and made a funny face at her. She grinned and winked at second uncle's house. Sang Wan couldn't help but smile. No wonder. Luya must have told eldest sister-in-law about what had happened just now with exaggerated details. When eldest sister-in-law heard that second uncle and second aunt had been humiliated, and that she was the one who had caused this humiliation, how could she not be happy? No wonder Taoist priest was also smiling happily at her. Fong smiled lightly. "It's fine, it's nothing. Great aunt and son-in-law must be hungry. I'll cook the whole chicken and fry the fish. The incense and candles are all ready-made. In a while, I'll pray to my father-in-law and mother-in-law. After that, we'll cook and eat. I've caused trouble for sister-in-law again. Sister-in-law can just call me Wan Nyang. Great aunt feels awkward hearing that." Sang Wan smiled and agreed. She then called Luya to help out in the kitchen. Fong smiled and gave an AI sound. She glanced at Luya's clothes and hurriedly waved her hand. Forget it. The kitchen is full of dust and sparks. There's no need to ruin her new clothes. I'll go with Mother Sue." She then glared at Luya and scolded with a smile. "Girl, you're quite lucky to be able to wear such clothes. Take good care of your young miss. If you dare to betray your master, I won't care where you are and will come knocking on your door." "Great aunt, don't worry. Even if Luya doesn't listen to anyone, I wouldn't dare to not listen to you," Luya said with a smile. The few of them laughed. Fong Shi spat at Luya again and scolded her with a smile. "Little girl, you've got guts to talk back." After saying that, she carefully instructed the 2 children, "Don't fight. And don't dirty Auntie's clothes." She then called for Nanny Sue to leave. After Madame Fong finished preparing the offerings, the group of people went to the side room where the memorial tablets were placed. They set up a small wooden table and placed the whole chicken, whole fish, and a large square piece of streaky pork on the table. They also placed 2 bowls of rice, 2 pairs of chopsticks, 3 wine cups, and a pot of rice wine on the table. Madame Fong then pulled her son and daughter out of the room. Sang Hong lit the candles and held 3 incense sticks with both hands before bowing deeply to his parents' memorial tablets. Then, he solemnly reported to his parents that his younger sister had successfully married into the Shi family and that his son-in-law was a good person who took good care of his younger sister. He asked his parents to rest assured and wait. He carefully inserted the 3 incense sticks into the incense burner and stepped back to stand at the side. He motioned for Sang Wan and Shi Fengju to come forward to offer incense and pray. Sang Wan was speechless after hearing her big brother's words. She glanced at Shi Fengju from the corner of her eyes and did not understand how her big brother could tell that he took good care of her. After offering incense, kowtowing, and 3 cups of wine, Sang Hong called for Fong to come in and clean up. The siblings burned the paper money in the brazier in front of the memorial tablets and sprinkled a few drops of wine on it before letting Shi Fengju burn a few more. Then, the ceremony was completed. Wan Nyang, Fengju, let's go to second uncle's place and have a seat. We'll invite second uncle and second aunt over for lunch at noon. After that, the two of you can go back. This place isn't close to Qingzhou, so the earlier you go back, the more relieved I will be. Sang Hong said after leaving the room. Sang Wan nodded and said with a smile, Big brother and Alang, please wait for a while. I'll pack up and come over. Naturally, she could not go to second uncle's place empty-handed. The bride's gift for returning to her family's home was prepared long before the bride married into the family. As for how the gift would be divided, it was up to the bride's family to decide. Sang Wan had a rough idea of what to do and had already distributed the gifts yesterday. However, it would be better to inform Fong at this time. Sang Wan thought about it and went into the kitchen. She pulled Fong to the side and whispered with a smile, Eldest sister-in-law, let's go to second uncle's place and have a seat. In a while, we'll invite second uncle and second aunt over for lunch. Say, I'll bring 2 bolts of crepe, 2 bolts of 10 brocade silk, a pair of golden hairpins, and a pair of golden earrings for second aunt. 2 jars of pear blossom white and 2 bolts of round pattern silk for second uncle. 2 bolts of clothing, a pair of golden bracelets, 2 pairs of silk flowers, 2 pairs of Jinhua ham, 2 caddies of white fungus, 1 caddy of bird's nest, and 100 taels of silver. Is that appropriate? Fong glanced at Nanny Su, who was listening attentively, and sneered, You sure are rich, to give them so many things. If I were to say, even if I were to throw 10 taels of silver at them, they would still be laughing so hard. You're the only one who still remembers such elders. I say, now that you're married, you can't be a good person who only remembers kindness and not grudges. Otherwise, you'll suffer in the future. Sang Wan's heart warmed, and she smiled warmly. I know that eldest sister-in-law is doing this for my own good. I'll remember eldest sister-in-law's words. After all, they're elders, and I'll give them face. Then I'll just say it in vain. Fong waved her hand to interrupt her and sighed. That's exactly right. Go, go. In any case, you don't lack these things now. Just pretend that you've dropped them on the ground and let others pick them up for free. Sang Wan pursed her lips and smiled. She leaned closer to Fong and whispered with a smile, Eldest sister-in-law, don't worry. I'll keep all the good things for eldest sister-in-law and eldest brother. Second brother's share is also good. I won't let outsiders take advantage of it. Sly girl, you've just gotten married, but you're already so scheming. But seeing you like this, your brother and I are relieved. Fong glared at her and scolded her with a smile. Her complexion also improved a lot. Sang Wan giggled. Her heart felt warm, and she bid farewell to Fong. On the second branch's side, Rio Kuwabaira and Li Yuan sent their eldest daughter to look around the door several times. Li Yuan was impatient and scolded her eldest daughter countless times. Li Yuan was Rio Kuwabaira's second wife. His eldest daughter, Sang Ro, was born from Rio Kuwabaira's ex-wife. She was 3 years older than Sang Wan, but she hadn't even been engaged yet. Li Yuan used the excuse that she couldn't find a suitable husband, but she and Sang Ro both knew what she was thinking. Sang Ro was angry in her heart, but there was nothing she could do. They're here, they're here. Cousin, cousin-in-law, and eldest cousin are here. Finally, they saw a group of people coming over. Lu Ye and 2 other well-dressed nannies were carrying large and small bags in their hands. Sang Ro was elated and quickly ran back to the house to report the news. Rio Kuwabaira and Li Yuan quickly stood up and tidied their clothes subconsciously. They looked at each other to see if there was anything wrong. Li Yuan stepped forward and poked Sang Ro's forehead with her finger. She scolded, What cousin, cousin-in-law? You have no manners. That's the young master and young mistress of the Shi family. What kind of person are you? Are you allowed to call them cousin or cousin-in-law? Look at your silly face. Why aren't you hiding in your room? Don't come out and make a fool of yourself. Sang Ro subconsciously looked at her father with grievance before her gaze fell on her half-sister, Sang Yen. Ryo Kuwabara couldn't help but follow his eldest daughter's gaze to look at his youngest daughter. Sang Yan's hair was neatly combed and she wore a beautiful silk flower and a silver hairpin embedded with turquoise jade. She wore a red chrysanthemum embroidered jacket, a pink skirt, and a pair of silver blue shoes embroidered with begonia petals. She was dressed even more grandly than during the New Year. As for Sang Ro, she was dressed in a green shirt that had been washed until it was white. Her old shoes were stained with mud, and her hair was messy. She shrank her shoulders and arched her back, cowering in fear. No matter how one looked at her, she was not pleasing to the eye. "What are you doing? Don't you know that there are important guests coming to our house today?" Ryo Kuwabara frowned and glared at Li Yuan unhappily. Li Yuan cursed in her heart, but she cried out loudly, "Oh, husband, what are you saying? What does a yen have that she doesn't?" "Yesterday, I already said that there are important guests coming to our house today. I told the two of them to dress up properly and wear their best clothes so that they won't embarrass you and our family. But this damned girl didn't listen to me and insisted on wearing this. What can I do about it? She's already an adult, yet she still needs this old mother to help her dress. Do you think that everyone in your Sang family is a Wan's life?" As she spoke, Li Yuan glared at Sang Ro. Ryo Kuwabara thought about it carefully. Indeed, his wife had indeed instructed his two daughters in front of him last night after dinner. She hadn't said anything behind Sang Ro's back. Ryo Kuwabara couldn't help but become angry again. He frowned at Sang Ro and scolded, "You're already an adult, yet you still don't know any better. You purposely dressed like this to embarrass your father. Isn't that right? What are you standing there for? Quickly go back to your room." Sang Ro clenched her fists as tears welled up in her eyes. In the end, she didn't dare to contradict her father. She replied in an aggrieved manner and turned around to leave. Sang Ro's heart was filled with resentment. Early in the morning, she had to chop firewood, clean the pigsty, tidy up the vegetable garden, and work in the kitchen. Li Yuan didn't let her have a single moment of rest. She did have a new set of clothes, but could she wear them while doing all these chores? If it got dirty or ruined, she would be distressed. She would also be scolded by Li Yuan for being a wastrel. Once she complained to her father, it would be impossible for her to get new clothes to wear in the future. When Sang Ro walked away, she heard Li Yuan happily instructing her younger sister, "Did you hear that? Remember to pour tea for your cousin and cousin-in-law. Remember to be polite and greet them." Sang Ro clenched her teeth as her heart filled with hatred. "Second uncle, second aunt, are you home?" While they were talking, Sang Hong's voice was heard. "We're here, we're here." Sang Pingliang and Li Shi hurriedly responded and smiled happily like a blooming flower. The husband and wife hurriedly went out to greet them. Li Yuan suddenly pulled Ryo Kuwabara and lowered her voice, "Why is Ahiro also here?" "If he's here, then he's here," Ryo Kuwabara said impatiently. Li Yuan made a che sound and muttered in dissatisfaction, "It's not like a Wan doesn't know the way. Why would we need him to follow us? What a waste of our good tea." "A woman's view." Ryo Kuwabara stared at her. "Let's go. Don't say any more." "Awan, niece-in-law, hee. Quickly come in. We're waiting for you. Hee." Ryo Kuwabara repeatedly cupped his hands and smiled so widely that his teeth could not be seen. He called them Awan, niece-in-law, but his eyes seemed to be glued to Shi Fengju. When he saw Lu Ya and his two daughters-in-law carrying so many gifts, his heart bloomed with joy. He simply didn't know how to flatter Shi Fengju. Li Yuan's eyes also lit up. She automatically ignored the old grudges and affectionately held Sang Wan's hand. She clicked her tongue and praised, "Our Wan is really blessed. Look at how you're dressed. You're just like the young miss of a rich family. Seeing you like this, second aunt is also relieved. Good child, second aunt didn't dote on you in vain. Come, quickly come in and sit. Let's have a good chat. Second aunt still has a lot of things to tell you in detail." It's a pity that your mother passed away early. Other than second aunt, who else can talk to you? Chapter 16. Second Aunt. Sangwon didn't know whether to smile or not. Her face stiffened. Just like Shi Fengju, she couldn't shake her off forcefully and could only allow her to drag her into the house. Sangwon glanced at Shi Fengju from the corner of her eyes. Her eyes were full of pleading and a bitter smile. Shi Fengju had the foresight to avoid Ryo Kuwabara's affectionate gaze. His gaze met with Sangwon's, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. He almost wanted to laugh and nodded at her. Please, 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 take a seat, take a seat. Ryo Kuwabara and his wife escorted Shi Fengju and Sangwon into the house. They greeted them warmly and chatted non-stop, but they forcibly left Sang-hong aside. Fortunately, Sang-hong was used to the couple's behavior and silently followed behind them. Cousin-in-law, little sister Ah-wan, please have some tea. When everyone was seated, Sang Yen shyly came over with a tray with 2 cups of tea. Luya saw this and hurriedly took half a step forward. She took the teacups and offered them to Shi Fengju and then to Sangwon. Sangwon glanced around and found her eldest brother sitting on a small stool in the corner against the wall. Sangwon couldn't help but feel angry. If second uncle and second aunt could do it, then so be it. What kind of person did they treat her, Sangwon, as? Take it to granduncle. I'm not thirsty. Quickly invite granduncle over to sit. Sangwon said softly and glanced at Luya. Yes. Young mistress. Luya replied crisply and turned to walk towards Sang-hong. Ryo Kuwabara and Lee looked at each other simultaneously. Only then did they remember that Sang-hong was also here. How can you be so careless? How could you forget about your cousin? Why aren't you pouring more tea? Sang Pingyong glared at his daughter before smiling at Sang-hong. Come, 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 nephew Sang, sit here. You too, we're all familiar with each other. Do we still need your second uncle to greet us? Come quickly. No need, no need. Sang-hong hurriedly stood up and waved his hands in a flurry. Listening to Ryo Kuwabara's intimate and condemning words, Sang-hong actually felt a little guilty. It was as if he had really treated his uncle as an outsider and made him sad. I'll go back first. You guys chat, hee hee. Second uncle, second aunt, let's go have a meal together later. It's rare for Ah-wan to come back, let's get together. Sang-hong smiled and bid farewell. Of course, of course. We're a family. Then you go back first, we'll be there in a while, okay? Ryo Kuwabara smiled warmly and nodded his head. Sang-hong smiled and nodded at Shi Fengju before taking his leave. Almost as though he was running away, he rushed out of the door. Come, Ah-wan, let's talk in the room. Second aunt still has a lot to say to you. Your younger sister hasn't been intimate with you for a long time. She also wants to talk to you. Lee smiled and pulled Sangwon up. Sangwon knew what she wanted to say. It was nothing more than asking about the Shi family's wealth and how she was treated in the Shi family. Then, it would be reminding her not to forget her roots and to remember them and so on. She did not want to hear a single word of this. She felt disgusted. It's not early anymore. Sister-in-law's side is almost done preparing the dishes. Let's go have a meal first. It's not too late to talk about it later. We can't let big brother and sister-in-law wait for too long. Sangwon said gently. You're right, let's go then. Shi Fengju nodded his head in agreement. Ryo Kuwabara and Lee could put on the airs of elders in front of Sangwon, but they did not dare to do so in front of Shi Fengju. Instead, they treated Shi Fengju's words like an imperial edict. After listening to the couple, they smiled and said, You guys go first, we'll be there soon, we'll be there soon. Lee did not forget to call out to Sang Yen, Yen, accompany your cousin first and talk to her more. You two sisters should get closer. Sang Ro, who was secretly watching from the back, felt her heart in her throat. She looked at Sangwon eagerly, hoping that Sang Yen would remember her cousin. As long as she mentioned it, her stepmother would not be able to stop her from going over to show her face. Sang-won's eyebrows slightly raised and her lips slightly opened. Indeed, she had thought of Sang-ro. She was about to ask, but she held back after thinking for a while. In the past, she and Sang-ro were not close, and Sang-ro was not easy to get along with. She could do whatever she wanted in her family, so why should she meddle? Sang-ro saw that she did not mention it and left with the group. She was disappointed and could not help but hate Sang-won. She could not help but curse in a low voice and quietly return to her room. Thinking of her mother who died young, she could not help but cry silently on the bed. As soon as Sang-won and Shi Fengju left, Ryo Kuwabara and Lee could not wait to look and open the gifts they brought. Seeing so many brightly colored, soft, and silky fabrics and gold jewelry, Madame Lee couldn't help but smile from ear to ear. She couldn't stop praising them as she touched and pinched them. Look at this gold hairpin, it's even studded with gems. TSK, this style, this weight, this is the first in our village. Maybe it's even better than the one given to old Master Shen's wife in town. Lee happily inserted the gold hairpin into her hairbun. She flipped through the gift list in her hand and handed it to Ryo Kuwabara. Master, read it out quickly. My eyes are dazzled. Ryo Kuwabara cleared his throat and read out the gift list one by one. Lee's joy increased as she listened, and the corners of Ryo Kuwabara's mouth also curled up. Hearing that there was also 100 taels of silver, the husband and wife's 4 eyes widened as they searched. Here it is. It's banknotes. Lee found a red envelope and opened it. She shook the banknote in her hand. Give it to me. Ryo Kuwabara's eyes lit up and immediately reached out to grab it. Lee subconsciously withdrew her hand to avoid it. Give it to me quickly. Ryo Kuwabara glared at Lee and scolded. Although Madame Lee was usually a shrew, she hadn't reached the point where she dared to go against her husband. Seeing his stern face and glaring eyes, she didn't dare to refuse and could only reluctantly hand over the banknotes. Ryo Kuwabara grabbed it and put it into his clothes. I'll keep it, so you don't squander it away again. Also, don't touch this gold. I'll keep it later. This is the jewelry my niece gave me. Lee refused to accept it. If you want jewelry, go back to town and buy it. It's too eye-catching to wear. What if someone steals it? What niece? That's our Sang family's daughter, my niece. Hey, why aren't you taking off that hairpin? Are you going to wear it when we eat later? It's not embarrassing enough. Ryo Kuwabara said without any trace of politeness. Lee felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured over her head. Her heart turned cold, and her joy immediately cooled down. Her husband was famous for being stingy with his money. No one could take out a single piece of money that had fallen into his hands. Even she didn't know how much money he had hidden away. When he wasn't at home, she and her youngest daughter had secretly searched for him more than once. They had searched every corner of the house and even under the bed, but they couldn't find a single clue. These silver and gold jewelry, she could only look at them. There was definitely no share for her. That's right, it's your niece. Lee sneered and said sourly, I don't know if she's doing it for face's sake or if she really cares about you as her uncle. That large cart of gifts only brought so little. You have 100 taels here, but she might have 1,000 taels there. Hey, you're still an elder. Ryo Kuwabara, who was counting the gold jewelry and silver coins according to the gift list, froze. He couldn't help but feel that it was unfair. Lee's words were correct. He had seen the large cart of gifts with his own eyes. What he received wasn't even half of what there was. There was also silver. Maybe there was more than 1,000 taels there. Ryo Kuwabara felt more and more unsatisfied. He glared fiercely at Lee and scolded, You still have the face to say that? If it wasn't for you being mean and stingy in the past, would she not be good to us today? My reputation has been ruined by you. Since she's willing to send gifts today, you should be satisfied. Why haven't you scrammed to the side yet? Lee was secretly angry. Who would have thought that the Shi family would be so cowardly to marry such a poor girl? Besides, aren't you the same? You're the one who's good to her? You owe her a favor? Not a single word of praise is true. Lee secretly cursed, but she didn't have the courage to talk back to Rio Kuwabara. She snorted and said, "No matter what, we're still your elders. Even if you break the heavens, you can't overstep this principle." Rio Kuwabara snorted and didn't say anything. However, he was secretly thinking that after they left, he would look for Sang Hong to talk about it. No matter what, he had to get some benefits. He couldn't lose out like this. Rio Kuwabara entered the room and temporarily put the gold jewelry away. The two of them then went to Sang Hong's house to eat. The dining table was already set. Fong was in the courtyard coaxing Sang Quan and Sang Nuan. As usual, the children weren't served at the table. Raising her head, she saw Rio Kuwabara and his wife enter. One of them looked indignant while the other looked listless. Fong's eyes turned and she guessed most of it. She smiled at the two of them and said, "Second uncle, second aunt, you're here. Please come in, we've been waiting for you." Usually, Fong was indifferent to Rio Kuwabara and his wife. The two of them had never taken advantage of her before. Now that she suddenly smiled at them, the husband and wife's hearts skipped a beat. They looked at each other and thought of the same thing. People are in high spirits when faced with happy events. For Fong to be like this, it must be because she received a big gift. The two of them felt even more indignant. They snorted and walked past Fong into the house. Fong pursed her lips and sneered silently. "Second uncle, second aunt, you're here. Have a seat." Sang Hong hurriedly stood up to greet them. Shi Fengju and Sang Wan also stood up. Sang Yen secretly heaved a sigh of relief. How could she have anything to say to Sang Wan? She was already feeling uneasy. "Haha, have a seat, have a seat. I've made my niece and son-in-law wait for a long time." Rio Kuwabara cupped his hands and smiled at Shi Fengju. When they sat down, they saw that the table was filled with neatly prepared dishes. There were chicken, duck, fish, and even a pot of good wine. Rio Kuwabara and Lee finally smiled from the bottom of their hearts. During the meal, Rio Kuwabara stole the limelight and kept calling out to Shi Fengju. Shi Fengju felt miserable and embarrassed. He hurriedly moved his chopsticks a few times and said that he was full, then retreated to the side to drink tea. After Shi Fengju left the table, Rio Kuwabara and his wife didn't hold back anymore. They ate like a hurricane and almost didn't eat until they were full. Chapter 17. It's getting late and we still have to hurry. We'll head back first. Second uncle, second aunt, big brother, big sister, take care of yourselves. Sang Wan said with a smile after sitting down for a while after dinner. What's the hurry? My son-in-law hasn't said anything yet. Rio Kuwabara was still thinking about how to get closer to Shi Fengju. When he heard Sang Wan's words, he was very unhappy. He glared at Sang Wan like an elder and said earnestly, "My dear niece, it's not that I want to nag you, but when you get married, you have to put your husband first. Don't lose face for our Sang clan." Sang Wan and Fong looked at each other silently. Both of them could see the helplessness in each other's eyes. "We should head back. The road to Qingzhou is quite far. It'll be too late if we go back any later." Shi Fengju could only smile and agree. He then looked at Sang Hong and said, "Second uncle, you worry too much. Wan Yang is very good. She's very polite. My mother also likes her very much." Sang Hong's expression relaxed when he heard that. He smiled and nodded. Rio Kuwabara chuckled and said, That's good, that's good. It's not that I want to boast, but our Sang clan's young ladies are without a doubt." Shi Fengju smiled and said, "Yes. What a pity. It was too rushed. We didn't even have a chance to properly talk." Rio Kuwabara sighed regretfully. Next time, when you come back to stay for 2 nights, we'll have a proper gathering again, all right?" Shi Fengju gave a vague smile and nodded. Zhang Huan and the others were already leading the horses and pulling the carriage, ready to pull the carriage. The group left. Shi Fengju and Sang Wan got on the carriage and left. The carriage rumbled and soon left the village. It disappeared after turning a corner. Ryo Kuwabara heaved a sigh of relief. Nephew. He turned to Sang Hong. I have to tidy up the house. Second uncle and second aunt, if there's nothing else, you can go back first. His father, go to the field at the entrance of the village and see if the fence is stable. If not, add some more. Fong rudely interrupted Ryo Kuwabara's words. Ryo Kuwabara coldly glared at Fong and reprimanded, "What kind of attitude is that? You have no right to interrupt when your elders are talking. My eldest nephew is a scholar. How can you let him do that kind of menial work in the fields? It's a disgrace to the educated, do you understand? Cultured." Fong laughed strangely. Didn't they say that scholars are useless? They might as well farm instead of holding books. When did you become a gentleman again? Ryo Kuwabara flew into a rage out of humiliation. He held back his embarrassment and turned to stare at Sang Hong. Look at your wife, what kind of words are you saying? I'm talking about what second uncle used to say. Fong laughed. Second uncle has no choice but to admit that he's old. As expected, his memory is so bad when he's old. He actually forgot all the words that he used to say. Lee couldn't help but cry out, how can the past be the same as now? Exactly. Oh, so that's how it is. Fong suddenly understood. She clapped her hands and laughed. No wonder. In the past, second uncle and second aunt wouldn't even take a step into our house. We couldn't even invite them. Now, they couldn't even drive them away. Fong didn't say the second half of her sentence, but her gaze towards Ryo Kuwabara and Lee said it all. The two of them were so angry that they couldn't refute her. All right, Ah Sien, let's invite second uncle and second aunt into the house to talk. Sang Hong quickly coughed and said when he saw his second uncle and second aunt's faces turning purple from anger. Fong snorted and pretended not to hear, but she didn't say anything else. They were her elders after all. Now that Awan had just married into the Sher family, if she were to immediately make a scene with them, outsiders would inevitably say that she was trying to curry favor with the Sher family and was disrespectful to her elders. She didn't mind it, but she didn't want her third brother and young children to be implicated. Ryo Kuwabara rolled his eyes at her. The two of them entered Sang Hong's house and sat down. Mama Su had already cleaned up the house. When she saw them enter, she quickly went out and told Fong to go back to the kitchen to wash the dishes. Second uncle, second aunt, is there something you want to talk about? Sang Hong asked politely. Ryo Kuwabara glanced at Fong, who had her arms crossed in front of her chest and was leaning against the door. He cleared his throat and coughed twice. Second uncle? Sang Hong didn't understand and looked at Ryo Kuwabara blankly. What an idiot. Lee secretly rolled her eyes and said with a fake smile, I say, niece-in-law, are second uncle and second aunt not even worthy of drinking a cup of tea in your house? Sang Hong came to a realization and glanced at his wife. Ah Sien. Fong turned around without saying a word and came in with a teacup in each hand. She placed it in front of Ryo Kuwabara and Lee and said with a smile, tea leaves are expensive and can't fill our stomachs. Our family doesn't have the spare money to waste, so we can only drink plain water. Second uncle, second aunt, please bear with it. If you want to drink tea, you can drink it at home. Ryo Kuwabara and Lee were angry, but there was nothing they could do. That was in the past. Lee took advantage of the situation and said with a smile, now that you're connected to the Sher family, riches and honor are just a matter of time. I'm afraid that in the future, if it's not one tael per cup, you won't drink it. As soon as Lee said that, without waiting for Fong to refute, Sang Hong's face changed and said seriously, second aunt, what are you saying? Ah Wan's marriage to the Sher family was set by my father when he was still alive. As her brother, I don't have the ability to give her a grand wedding. I've already let down my parents in heaven. Now that she's married, how can I give her trouble and implicate her? Ryo Kuwabara and Lee saw that Sang Hong, who had never been angry before, was angry. Both of them were stunned and subconsciously felt a little scared. An honest person's anger was more powerful than an ordinary person's. Fong pursed her lips and wanted to add, We're marrying off our sister, not selling her. But she held back after thinking about it. Your second aunt doesn't have any other intentions. Sang Pingliang coughed awkwardly and forced a smile. Isn't it normal for relatives to support and help each other? Isn't it normal for one to prosper and suffer together? Yes, that's what I meant. Anyway, their Shi family is so rich, even a strand of their hair is stronger than our waist. If second uncle, second aunt, Sang Hong said sternly, the Sang family is the Sang family, and the Shi family is the Shi family. Ah Wan has just entered the Shi family. It's fine if our Sang family doesn't have the ability to support her, but we can't give her trouble. Second uncle, second aunt, please don't have such thoughts for the sake of my deceased parents. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite as your nephew. Sang Hong glared at them coldly. The coldness in his eyes made Rio Kuwabaira and Li shiver. Fong, who was watching from the side, also couldn't help but straighten her back. For the first time, she looked at her husband with admiration. Rio Kuwabaira was furious, but under Sang Hong's cold pressure, he couldn't say a word. Sang Hong's honesty was well known in the surrounding villages. His words were irrefutable evidence. No one had ever doubted the words that came out of his mouth. He had never had a conflict with anyone. If he did, everyone would definitely think that it was the other party's fault. Although Rio Kuwabaira was greedy and shameless, he didn't dare to take the risk of falling out with Sang Hong. He believed that if he really went to look for Sang Wan, let's not talk about whether Sang Wan would do as he wished. Who knows what Sang Hong would do? An honest person also had their scariest side. I was just saying, don't be anxious. That, you are Ah Wan's elder brother. Even if you need her help, shouldn't you be the one to do it? As an elder, I can't bring myself to do it. Rio Kuwabaira stuttered. Sang Hong's aura subsided. He stood up and cupped his hands in apology to Rio Kuwabaira. I was too harsh with my words just now. Please forgive me, second uncle. Rio Kuwabaira's expression softened. He lightly snorted and waved his hand magnanimously. Forget it, I won't argue with you. We're family. You're doing it for Ah Wan's sake. That's right. We're not that unreasonable. Li also said. She rolled her eyes and gave a fake smile. Speaking of which, Ah Wan brought back a lot of things today. It's enough for you to live the rest of your life. Here it comes, we're finally getting to the main topic. Fong sneered without any change in her expression. Sang Hong said, that's Ah Wan and the Shi family's kind intentions. I didn't count how many things there were. How can a carriage full of things be little? Nephew Gu, you should at least give us some, right? Your two younger sisters' dowries haven't been settled yet. We're all family, you can't just ignore us. Li immediately said. Rio Kuwabaira also stared at Sang Hong with his eyes wide open. Fong was so angry that she wanted to laugh. As parents, it's your duty to marry off your daughters. Don't tell me you want us to bear the burden. How preposterous. How could Sang Hong not know this logic? Thinking of his two younger sisters, especially Sang Ro, who was older than Sang Wan, he didn't even get married. If this dragged on for a year, she would become an old maid. How pitiful. Fong knew what he was going to say when she saw his expression. She secretly cursed and said, we love our two younger sisters dearly. When they get married in the future, we'll have to add on their dowries. Every family has its own difficulties. How can second uncle and second aunt not know? In August, the autumn imperial examination will be held. If he passes, he'll have to go to the capital for the examination next year. There'll be a lot of traveling expenses. We'll have to buy a few sets of new clothes, right? There's also the brush, ink, paper, and books. We'll also have to attend poetry gatherings and visit seniors. We can't go empty-handed, right? There's still a lot to spend money on. It's almost the Dragon Boat Festival. According to the rules, we'll still have to send gifts to the Shi family. Where will we get the extra money? We'll have to sell the things that Ah Wan brought back to exchange for money. If the gifts aren't enough, won't Ah Wan become a joke? After the Spring Festival, Ah Wan will have to return home. We'll have to prepare the gifts in advance. My son and daughter are growing up year after year. One has to study, and the other has to prepare for her dowry. If you don't think about it, you won't know. Everything needs money. I'm also worried about it. Fong counted with her fingers as she spoke. Rio Kuwabara and Li were speechless. Sang Hong originally wanted to say something, but now he hesitated. No wonder everyone says that you have a glib tongue. Look at what you're saying, aren't you exaggerating a little too much? You just don't want to share with us. Is there a need to list so many things? Li harumphed. Fong secretly sneered. A person's heart was indeed insatiable. Ah Wan didn't come to their house empty-handed. They seemed to have forgotten. Chapter 18. Rio Kuwabara also harumphed. Forget it, forget it. Just stop talking. It's our fault for being so useless. We can't even take care of our own family. We've never helped them before. It's reasonable that they don't acknowledge us as their elders. Second uncle, you're treating us as outsiders. Sang Hong's scalp turned numb. He said, the things are still here. Why don't second uncle and second aunt take a look, and then... Okay. Then we'll do that. Li immediately interrupted Sang Hong's words happily. She stood up and said with a smile, I knew that our eldest nephew has always been filial and respectful to his elders. He's not like those mean people. Fong glared at her husband in dissatisfaction. Seeing that Li had already started walking towards the side room, she could only follow after her. Since his father has already spoken, then let's see what we can take. The four of them entered the side room. When they saw the things piled on the Kong bed, Rio Kuwabara and Li's eyes lit up, and they started rummaging through them. Fong stepped forward, took out the gift list, and waved it. She took out several items and piled them to the side. This is for the child's youngest uncle. We can't make the decision. We have to keep it for him. She then took out a pair of gold hairpins, 2 bolts of cloth, and 2 headscarves. She called Mrs. Su in and handed them to her on the spot. Our grand aunt said that you've taken care of her since she was young. These are for you. Mrs. Su quickly thanked her with a smile and took them, then went to tidy them up. These bolts of cloth, a set of 4 treasures of the study, and 2 gold necklaces are for Xiao Quan and Xiao Nuan. Fong took them out again and pouted at the remaining items. That's all. Second uncle and second aunt can do as you see fit. Oh, right, there's also 200 taels of silver. We have to keep that for the child's youngest uncle to take the imperial examinations and to buy gifts for the Dragon Boat Festival. Rio Kuwabara and Li felt their hearts ache when they saw Fong pick up the items one by one. Everything she said was reasonable, but they couldn't refute her. In the end, they picked up 4 pieces of cloth, a pack of bird's nest, a pair of gold bracelets, and 2 jars of wine before they stopped. Before he left, Rio Kuwabara turned around and asked Fong, Is it really only 200 taels of silver? Fong was already standing aside with a dark face. She sneered and said, Second uncle, if you don't believe me, then come in and search for me. Rio Kuwabara chuckled. He hugged the 2 jars of good wine tightly and left with the cloth under his arm. By the way, Li smiled and said, There's still a lot of food left for lunch. Since there are so few of you, you won't be able to finish it. I'll come over to get some later so that it won't spoil. Oh, thank you, second aunt. Fong sneered. Seeing the couple finally leave, Fong let out a long sigh of relief. She raised her hand and undid the top button on her collar. She was almost suffocating to death. Ah Xian, they are still elders. Sang Hong pulled his wife's hand and forced a smile. I know. Fong replied impatiently. Elders, humph. I've never expected them to behave like elders. But it's different now. You have to keep a close eye on them. I'm not afraid. If they're really blinded by lard and run to the Shi family, then Awan will be in trouble. I will. Sang Hong trembled when he heard this. Second uncle and second aunt wouldn't do such a thing, right? Fong did not say anything else. She unwrapped the items one by one and unconsciously touched her clothes. Inside, there were 300 taels of silver notes and a pair of gold bracelets inlaid with pearls that Sang-won did not write on the gift list. On the return journey, Sang-won hung her head in silence. How embarrassing! The more she thought about it, the more she felt that her big brother and sister-in-law had not had it easy all these years. It was no wonder that her sister-in-law had a fiery temper and sometimes spoke harshly. Anyone who had such an unreliable pair of uncle and aunt would not be able to tolerate them. Fortunately, the situation in her previous life did not happen again. Her big brother was still her big brother, and her sister-in-law was still her sister-in-law. And she did not make a fool of herself in front of the She family's servants. Chong Huan and the rest were She Fengju's confidants. Li Yan's and Song He's family worked in the outer courtyard and were also tight-lipped. She could only hope that today's matter would not be spread in the She family. One had to know that Gu Fengzi was always waiting to catch her in her pigtails. Unintentionally, she raised her eyes and coincidentally saw She Fengju looking at her. Their eyes met and She Fengju smiled at her. At this moment, Sang-won was feeling frustrated. Seeing She Fengju smile, she felt that it was very dazzling. Her eyes turned red and she lowered her head. After a moment, she sighed, "Laugh if you want. Today really surprised you, didn't it? No matter what, they are my uncle and aunt, my elders. If there's anything inappropriate, please don't take it to heart." She Fengju was stunned and felt a little apologetic. He hurriedly said, "I didn't mean to laugh at you. You're thinking too much." "I don't believe you." Sang-won raised her head and looked at him. Her eyes were filled with these two words. "Really? Of course." She Fengju nodded seriously and sighed, "It hasn't been easy for you these past few years, right?" Sang-won was stunned and shook her head. "My big brother, sister-in-law, and second brother are all very good to me. I don't care about other gossip." Second aunt's mouth, "If you want to be serious with her, you'll have to be tired of living." She Fengju smiled and suddenly said, "I'm serious. Actually, you're looking down on me too much. Cousin's father, my uncle, compared to your second uncle, hee." Sang-won raised her eyebrows in surprise. Gu Fengzi's father? She only knew that Gu Fengzi's mother was her mother-in-law's biological sister, who had passed away a long time ago. She had no impression of her father. "So, don't worry. When we go back, no one will talk about what happened today." Sang-won nodded and smiled embarrassedly. When they returned to the She family, the sky was already dark. The two of them went to the main courtyard to greet Wang. Wang didn't see them and told them to go back. The two of them went back to Ning Garden and didn't speak for the rest of the night. The next morning, She Fengju went out. After Sang-won finished washing up, she went to greet Wang and served her. After 3 dynasties, she was officially a part of the family and no longer a newcomer. As a daughter-in-law, she should serve her mother-in-law. She didn't dare to be careless. When Sang-won arrived, Wang had just woken up and was drinking ginseng tea. Sang-won hurriedly went forward and curtsied to greet her. "Get up quickly. There's no need to be so polite." Wang raised her hand with a smile and asked, "You haven't eaten breakfast yet, right?" "Yes." "It won't be too late for your daughter-in-law to eat after serving you," Sang-won said with a smile. "There's no need to go through so much trouble. You can eat with me. How was it when you went home yesterday? Is everything okay at home?" Wang asked casually as she put down the ginseng tea. "Thank you, mother-in-law. Everything is fine at home. Eldest brother and sister-in-law are also fine," Sang-won replied with a smile. She rushed forward and held Wang's arm as they went to the side hall to eat breakfast together. Sang-won was secretly puzzled. Her mother-in-law was suddenly so nice to her. She was afraid that she had something to tell her. Wang sure nodded and said, Then, she started chatting casually. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law sat down. Wang ordered Xiao Chun and Xiao Li to serve them. She also ordered Sang-won not to serve herself. Sang-won hurriedly thanked her again and let the maidservants serve her. After breakfast, Wang raised her hand and smiled at Sangwon. "Come, accompany me to the parlor and have a cup of tea to help with digestion." "Yes." Sangwon hurriedly agreed and went forward to help her. A maidservant served tea. Sangwon received it and heard Wang ask with a smile, "How is the taste of this tea?" "Of course it's good. The color is clear and the smell is fragrant. The taste is excellent." Sangwon smiled. Wang smiled and sighed. "I only drank this Sanwei Xiong 2 years ago. At that time, my spleen and stomach were not feeling well. It was that last Fengzi who found this tea for me. She said that drinking it will nourish the spleen and stomach and is good for the body. Since then, I have been drinking this tea. But now, I'm used to it." Hearing Wang praise Gu Fengzi, Sangwon's hand tightened and her heart skipped a beat. She could only smile and say, "That is Cousin Fengzi's filial piety. Mother-in-law, you didn't dote on her for nothing. Isn't that so?" Wang nodded her head and continued, "It's not that I want to say this, but that child Fengzi is even more considerate than my own daughter. Her temper is good, she treats people kindly, and she is meticulous. She doesn't hide any evil intentions. These 2 to 3 years, it's all thanks to her helping with the household's affairs that I was able to enjoy my life. Otherwise, who knows how chaotic it would be." Sangwon felt bitter and her tongue felt as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. She did not know what to say and could only reply with a soft, "Yes," before forcing a smile. "Wan Yong Wang finally said, "you've just entered the household and are not familiar with the household's affairs. It's not that I want to say this, but our Shi family is different from your Sang family. There are many things that you don't understand, and even if you want to learn, it won't be learned in a short period of time. In my opinion, the household's affairs should be handed over to Fengzi in the future. What do you say? The household's affairs will naturally be decided by mother-in-law. Whatever you say will be done." Wang's gaze was fixed on her. Sangwon did not hesitate and immediately smiled as she met her gaze. "And it's good that you think so too." Wang was satisfied and nodded her head with a smile. "It seems that I didn't misjudge you. You're indeed sensible. Don't worry, you're Fengju's wife, no one can surpass you. As a daughter-in-law, you must be virtuous and know when to advance and when to retreat. Fengzi is now helping you with these troublesome matters. You just have to focus on living your life peacefully and take care of your body so that our Shi family can have more children. Speaking of which, you still have to thank her later." "Mother is right." Sangwon smiled gently. "The household's affairs cannot be done without troubling Cousin Fengzi. This daughter-in-law is indebted to Cousin Fengzi and should indeed thank her." "That's exactly what you said." Wang became happier after hearing that. "However, this daughter-in-law has something to say. Everything else is fine, but Ning Garden is not good to trouble her." "Mother, what do you think?" Sangwon smiled. She could not fight for or manage other matters, but Ning Garden was different. That was where she would be living from now on. There was no reason for Gu Fengzi to interfere, or else she would not be able to eat or sleep well. Wang pondered for a moment before nodding her head with a smile. "That's true. Ning Garden's affairs will be handled by you." It was indeed inappropriate for Gu Fengzi to manage. "Yes. This daughter-in-law thanks mother." Sangwon stood up and bowed. Wang made an N sound. Having achieved her goal, she did not keep Sangwon any longer and waved her hand. "All right, you can go back too. Do what you need to do. I don't need you to serve me here. All right, in the future, you don't have to come so early to pay your respects. You can come half an hour later than today." Wang Shi's mother-in-law had passed away early, and when she was alive, she had a gentle temperament and did not like to manipulate others. Wang Shi had not experienced the hardships of a daughter-in-law becoming a mother-in-law, so she did not have the mood or interest to manipulate her daughter-in-law. Chapter 19. In contrast, she didn't want her daughter-in-law to be in front of her. Otherwise, it would make her feel uncomfortable. It would be better for her to have her maidservants serve her. She could do whatever she wanted without any scruples. She didn't need to put on the airs of an elder. Speaking of which, it was very tiring to put on airs and maintain a dignified manner. Sang-won was slightly surprised. It seemed that her mother-in-law really didn't like her daughter-in-law setting rules. The cold treatment she gave her in her previous life wasn't completely discussed. Sang-won's heart was filled with a myriad of emotions. Yes, then daughter-in-law will leave first. Sang-won bowed and excused herself. Suddenly, she raised her head and smiled. Mother, if you're bored, you can send someone to call daughter-in-law. Daughter-in-law will accompany you to relieve your boredom. Good. Wong was very pleased and nodded with a smile. Seeing that Sang-won had left, Wong found a comfortable position to lean against the soft couch and asked Jiang Mama, what do you think of my daughter-in-law? This old servant thinks it's not bad. The old master's eyesight is really good. Eldest madam, you're so lucky. Jiang Mama smiled and flattered. I also think he's not bad. It's not that I want to say it, but I really have to admit that people who come from scholarly families act differently. It's very pleasing to look at. Wong smiled and suddenly sighed with satisfaction. She muttered with a smile, both are good. Both are not bad. And not bad. Go and see what Miss Biao is doing. Invite Miss Biao over. Wong raised her eyebrows and pursed her lips at the young maidservant. She smiled somewhat proudly. Gu Fengzi had been waiting restlessly in Peony Park for a long time. When she heard her aunt summon her, she hurriedly went over. When she arrived at the entrance of the main courtyard, she stopped and tidied up her expression and clothes. Then, she lifted her feet and gently walked in. Aunt, come and sit down. We're family, there's no need to be so polite. Without waiting for her to greet her, Wong smiled and waved at her. Gu Fengzi smiled and went over to sit next to Wong. Wong held her hand and said with a smile, I have already told Wan Nyong that you will still be in charge of the mansion from now on. Wan Nyong has no objections. In the future, you'll have to be more careful. Auntie has faith in your work. The corners of Gu Fengzi's lips unconsciously curled up high. Her eyes were like flowers, and her heart was as sweet as honey. However, she hesitated and said, I'm afraid this isn't too good, right? After all, eldest cousin-in-law is the mistress of the mansion. Will she really not say anything? Don't worry. Wang Shi smiled and said, although auntie is old and useless, a few words from me are still effective. In this household, auntie has the final say. Since she had agreed, then she had agreed. In the future, other than Ning Garden, you have to take care of everything in this manner. Don't make any mistakes that will disappoint aunt. Ning Garden. The smile on Gu Fengzi's face froze. That's right. Ning Garden is where she lives, so she can take care of it herself. It will save you a lot of trouble. More importantly, don't attract any suspicion. Wang unconsciously moved closer to Gu Fengzi and lowered her voice to say the last sentence. It could be seen that she truly treated Gu Fengzi as one of her own. Gu Fengzi gently nodded and made an N sound. She smiled and said, Aunt is so thoughtful and considerate of me. You are even closer to me than my own mother. She couldn't help but secretly feel depressed. Ning Garden was Sang-won's residence, but it was also her eldest cousin's residence. She originally planned to put most of her energy into Ning Garden and keep track of her eldest cousin's whereabouts. She didn't think that one sentence from her aunt would ruin her plans. Wait a minute. Gu Fengzi's heart skipped a beat. Her aunt was used to being idle, so how could she have thought of this? It must have been Sang-won, that slut, who suggested it herself. This wasn't hard to figure out. She just had to ask the maidservants who were serving her at the time. If that was really the case, then this woman was quite cunning. Your mother is my younger sister, so aren't you like my daughter? Silly child, always saying silly things. Wang smiled and affectionately looked at Gu Fengzi. Gu Fengzi forced a grateful smile. She felt somewhat uncomfortable with the word, daughter. She wanted to be her aunt's daughter-in-law, not her daughter. Aunt, I still have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it. If it's not right, Aunt, Please don't be angry with me. He, your words have always been reasonable. How could it not be right? Speak. Auntie is listening. Gu Fengzi smiled and said, even though my aunt thinks highly of me and my cousin-in-law doesn't have any objections, but now that my cousin-in-law already has a proper wife, wouldn't it be improper for me to take care of the household? I'm afraid that the servants may not be willing to accept it. I'm afraid that in the end, I'll still have to disappoint my aunt. Gu Fengzi's voice gradually lowered, and her expression was pitiful. As if she had thought of something, Wang's face darkened. She snorted, let's see who dares. This is the Shi household, it's not up to outsiders to say anything. If anyone dares to speak out of turn, I'll help you. No way. I'm even more unfilial now that I have to trouble my aunt over such a small matter. After all, I'm not the rightful master of this manor, so I can't blame them for not accepting me. Auntie's words are naturally effective, but that crafty slave is not convinced in his words. He will definitely say a few words behind my back, and I'm afraid that he will even drag Auntie into this. Wang finally came back to her senses. After pondering for a moment, she nodded slowly. What you said makes sense. If you had married in earlier, there wouldn't be so much trouble. Auntie. Gu Fengzi's face turned red, and she lowered her head shyly. She hurriedly said, I didn't mean that, I really didn't. I just didn't want others to talk and disturb the peace of the household, but I didn't think that it would lead to this. Now that my cousin-in-law has just married in, won't my cousin-in-law lose face? She'll be put in a difficult position in the future. When Wang heard Gu Fengzi say what she wanted to say, she felt a little apologetic. But at the same time, she pitied her for being sensible. She subconsciously said, why would she be put in a difficult position? She's the official wife of the household. Who would dare to put her in a difficult position? Unless she can't stand on her own. Saying that she'll lose face is even more wrong. It's not that I want to say this, but which young master doesn't have a few concubines? Our Fengju didn't have any before he got married, and that's already considered good. No matter where she goes, she'll be given enough face. Gu Fengzi rejoiced in her heart, but her face was full of hesitation. This, I'm afraid. Enough. I'll make the decision on this matter. You don't have to worry about it. When Fengju returns, I'll tell him. Just wait for the good news. Kiki. Wang glared at Gu Fengzi. Seeing that she still wanted to say more, she deliberately lowered her face and said, what? Are you not willing to? Auntie. Gu Fengzi subconsciously stood up and stomped her foot shyly. I won't talk to you anymore. I still have something to do, so I'll go first. Go. Wang laughed happily. In the midst of her laughter, Gu Fengzi had already turned and ran out. Sangwon returned to Ning Garden in deep thought. She was puzzled and did not understand why her mother-in-law could not wait to tell her such things. She carefully thought about it. Ever since she entered the household, she had not done anything wrong. Logically speaking, her mother-in-law would not embarrass her like this. What in the world had happened? At night, Luya saw that there was no one around and secretly told Sangwon the news she heard from the kitchen. Sangwon found out that after Shi Fengju accompanied her back to her mother-in-law's house yesterday, 2 maidservants had done something wrong and were punished by Gu Fengzi to kneel in the courtyard. The 2 maidservants were dissatisfied and complained behind Gu Fengzi's back. They said that now that there was already a young mistress in the household, how could an outsider like her be so arrogant? She really did not treat herself as an outsider. Coincidentally, when Gu Fengzi heard this, she felt so wronged that she cried in her room. Somehow, this matter reached Wang's ears and Wang was furious. She immediately gave the 2 maidservants 20 beatings and sent them to the outer courtyard to do manual labor. Then, she personally comforted Gu Fengzi. No wonder. Sangwon secretly nodded after hearing this. No wonder her mother-in-law could not wait to tell her this. It was to support Gu Fengzi. Sangwon sighed softly. Needless to say, in her previous life, this household was naturally handed over to Gu Fengzi to manage. That was the true beginning of her nightmare. She did not expect that in this life, she still could not change it. The result was still the same. Sang-won's heart trembled. If that was all, then it was fine. However, she was afraid that with Gu Fengzi's character, she would not let it go. If she entered the door now, what should she do? Hopefully, Shi Fengju was a person who kept his promise. Now that things had come to this, she could only place her hopes on this. Her words carried little weight and were not enough to change the facts. Sang-won's prediction came true. Gu Fengzi really did lead Wang to make the decision and told Shi Fengju the same thing. You and Fengzi grew up together. Everyone in the household knows about the two of you. This is something that will happen sooner or later. I don't think it's a big deal for her to enter the door now. What do you think? Wang smiled. Her casual tone indicated that she was very confident in this matter. After all, her son also liked this cousin of his. Shi Fengju helplessly smiled bitterly and said, Mother, you called me over immediately after I returned just to say this? What was there to be anxious about? What else do you think? Wang Shi was surprised that her son did not give her a happy reply. She glared at him and said, Fengzi is not young anymore. You should give her an explanation. I don't think Sang-won is an unreasonable person. She'll agree to it. Fengzi will be a concubine first. When she gives birth to a son in the future, she will be promoted to a second wife and be allowed to wear a red dress. This is already giving Wan Nyong enough face. Mother, is this your idea, or Fengzi's? Shi Fengju paused for a moment before asking. What's the difference? Wang frowned and said, Why? Are you not willing? I don't want to say this, but son, you can't do such a heartless thing. Wan Nyong is gentle and virtuous. Fengzi is smart and capable. The two of them will definitely get along well. This is your fortune. Mother, I have my own plans. You don't have to worry about it. Shi Fengju frowned. 1 year, it was just 1 year. He could afford to wait. He believed that she could too. He wanted to give his beloved a complete and grand wedding. What was wrong with that? Why did she have to suffer now? Nonsense. Wang could not help but get angry. She snorted and said, I don't have to worry. If I don't worry, then who will? This isn't just your problem alone. That child, Fengzi, I can't let her suffer. You may have the heart, but I can't. She then told Shi Fengju everything that happened yesterday and said, Tell me, can this wait? Chapter 20. Shi Fengju said patiently, Mother, servants are talkative and inexperienced. What's the point of bickering with them? If there's a talkative one, just drive them out. Where can't you find a good person to use? Fengzi isn't such a petty person, she won't care about this. Which household doesn't have a few unruly servants? If the water is too clear, there won't be any fish. How can his mother not understand such a simple logic? She can control the heavens and the earth, but can she control the mouths of others? Nonsense. Wang said angrily, Don't you know that gossip is a fearful thing? It's not that I want to say this, but don't tell me you don't intend to marry Fengzi. Miss Gu. Nanny Jiang took a glance and saw Gu Fengzi standing at the door in a daze. Her eyes widened in shock. The argument between the mother and son came to an abrupt end as the two looked towards the door at the same time. All they saw was Gu Fengzi's pale face and miserable expression. Choking with sobs, she covered her mouth and ran away. When did she come? Wang looked at Nanny Jiang. This old servant doesn't know either. Nanny Jiang said with a bit of shame and panic. Wang could not help but say anxiously, This is bad, she must have heard. What should we do? This child is so pitiful, but it's all because of you. Wang could not help but stare hatefully at her son. Mother, don't worry, I'll go look for her and explain this matter to her. You don't have to worry about it, Shi Fengju said and hurriedly left. In the warm room of Peony Park, Gu Fengzi was lying on the Kong bed and crying silently. Her slender shoulders trembled slightly, and from time to time, a few soft sobs could be heard. She looked very pitiful. Hearing the footsteps behind her, Gu Fengzi's body stiffened slightly before she slowly sat up. With her back facing the person, she quickly wiped away her tears and tidied up the wet hair that stuck to her face. Turning around, she glanced at Shi Fengju and bowed her head. "Big cousin." Shi Fengju saw that her eyes were slightly red and swollen. Her beautiful eyes were filled with tears and her small face was tear-stained. She looked very pitiful and adorable. His heart immediately softened. Shi Fengju gently patted her back. "Don't cry." Gu Fengzi's voice was nasal. She did not respond to his words. She turned her body to avoid his hand. He was actually unwilling to let her in. He was actually unwilling. She had never thought that he would refuse. She was only worried about her aunt. But to her surprise, not only did her aunt not reject her, he rejected her instead. This was something she couldn't accept. His attitude was like a sharp knife, ruthlessly cutting through her heart. Don't be like this." Shi Fengju smiled bitterly. "Why not? You." Gu Fengzi raised her head and looked at Shi Fengju with teary eyes full of affection. "You don't want me anymore?" "No, it's not." Shi Fengju's heart warmed as he gently embraced her. Have you forgotten what I told you? I've said it before, I won't let you down." "But you rejected my aunt." "Do you know my heart? Big cousin, you can't do this to me. My heart hurts, it hurts so much." Gu Fengzi couldn't help but cry again. These were tears of humiliation. "My feelings for you have never changed. Believe me." Shi Fengju emphasized, "The words I've said to you will never change. You have to believe me." Gu Fengzi only felt that these words were full of sarcasm. A wave of anger rushed to her head. She couldn't take it anymore and sneered at Shi Fengju. "Believe? How do you want me to believe? Before Sang Wan married into the family, you weren't even willing to hear her name. On the day of the wedding, you didn't even have a smile on your face. Do you know how sad and happy I was at that time? I was sad because I wasn't the one who was engaged to you, but happy because your feelings for me were so deep. And now, you're actually not willing to marry me? Why? Are you afraid that she will be wronged? In just 3 short days, you've already forgotten me and have her in your heart? For you, I'm willing to be a concubine. What else do you want? You keep saying that you won't betray me, but you've already betrayed me." Shi Fengju's heart was in pain and confusion. He was stunned for a moment. You don't believe me? The facts are all there. How do you want me to believe you? Shi Fengju's eyes darkened, and he felt disappointed for no reason. He said bitterly, "Maybe sometimes the truth isn't as you see it. As long as you believe me, you will know that my feelings for you have never changed." Gu Fengzi saw that he still didn't repent at this time. Instead, he was pushing the blame onto her and blaming her for being unreasonable. She was even angrier. She sneered, "Is that so? I want to hear how the truth isn't as I see it. Big cousin, you've never lied to me. But for Sang Wan, who has only been married to you for 3 days, you're using such obvious words to coax me. Although I'm not from a scholarly family and I'm not knowledgeable, I'm not a fool. I'll take what others say as the truth." As she spoke, she didn't know which of her heartstrings had been touched. She couldn't help but lower her head to wipe her tears and sob in a low voice. Shi Fengju was stunned. He suddenly felt his heart turn cold. He stared at the person in front of him in disbelief. He suddenly felt a little unfamiliar, as if there was a layer separating them. He couldn't see clearly. He was Shi Fengju, her childhood sweetheart. Shi Fengju was innocent with her. He wasn't some other person. He had already said so, but she still didn't believe him? Could it be that in her heart, he was such a person? He was actually no different from some random other person. Then, what was the point of his persistence and painstaking efforts? Chapter 21. Cousin-in-law won't blame me, right? Actually, Aunt and big cousin don't have any other intentions. It's just that I've always helped Aunt take care of small matters, so I can understand Aunt's thoughts better. Of course, in the future, other than reporting to Aunt, I will also inform big cousin-in-law and ask big cousin-in-law to make a decision together. No matter what, I won't dare to overstep big cousin-in-law or disrespect big cousin-in-law. Gu Fengzi had a smile on her face, and there was a hint of pride in her smile. It made her eyes look black and bright, and it was especially charming. Cousin, you're being too polite. How could I blame you? Sangwon smiled and said, Mother-in-law and young master have thought this through. This is good. As long as the family is harmonious, it will be everyone's greatest blessing. How could I not understand and appreciate mother-in-law and young master's painstaking efforts? Actually, young master has already told me that I'm just a figurehead. This matter, still needs to be decided by you. You can decide how to deal with it. I'm not in a hurry. As soon as Sangwon spoke, Gu Fengzi stared at her face without blinking. That burning gaze seemed to be able to see through her facial features and clearly dig out her thoughts. Sangwon's expression was calm, and there were no ripples in her eyes. She had a smile on her face, and her tone was gentle and soothing. She didn't seem to mind at all, let alone be unwilling or angry. Gu Fengzi suddenly felt like she had punched empty air, and her heart suddenly felt bored. She was unwilling to accept this, so she smiled and carefully said, Cousin-in-law, you really don't mind? After all, you are big cousin's wife, and the young mistress of this manor. I'm an outsider in the end. This manor's matters should be handled by you, big cousin-in-law. Luya, who was waiting on the side, couldn't help but secretly roll her eyes. She thought to herself, it sounds like you understand the reason. Why do you have to do such an unreasonable thing when you clearly know the reason? It's fine if you do it, but you have to say it like you're wronged. If my aunt were here, she would definitely scold you, hypocritical. You're still pretending to be innocent after taking advantage of me. Sangwon couldn't help but get angry. Why didn't this person know when to stop? She had made it clear enough, hadn't she? All she wanted was harmony in her family. Was she still not satisfied? What else did she want? Of course. Sangwon quickly reflected on herself, wondering if she was not sincere enough to make Gu Fengzi feel uneasy. Not only was she not aroused by Gu Fengzi's words, but she also showed some sincerity. I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. You can do whatever you want. Cousin, just do it. With me, you don't have to worry about anything, really. If you think too much, I'll feel bad. Gu Fengzi sneered in her heart. Keep pretending. If it wasn't for the fact that he pretended to be a profound cultivator, then he would be a complete idiot. Then I'm relieved. Gu Fengzi smiled happily. No wonder Aunt always praises cousin-in-law for being virtuous and having a good temperament. It really is so. In the future, cousin-in-law can relax and live a comfortable life. I don't want cousin-in-law to worry about complicated matters. Cousin-sister-in-law, you're the one who's truly blessed. Gu Fengzi giggled, and there was an unspeakable envy in her laughter. Sangwon didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This person, in the blink of an eye, changed her tone. Did she want her to accept her kindness? She had become a blessed person, and it was all thanks to her that she blocked all the complicated matters for her. Sangwon didn't want to accept her inexplicable kindness verbally, even if she didn't want to verbally. Hearing this, she smiled and lowered her head to drink her tea, no longer replying. Gu Fengzi also didn't continue and smiled. Since that's the case, I'll go back first. That's right, Ning Garden is managed by cousin-in-law, so I'll have someone send the roster to cousin-in-law later. If there's anything missing, or if there's anything that needs to be changed, or if there's a servant that needs to be replaced, cousin-in-law must tell me. If cousin-in-law is wronged, aunt and cousin-in-law won't let me off, hee. I'll have to trouble cousin-in-law. Sangwon pursed her lips into a smile and nodded. After Gu Fengzi left, Luya and Sangwon looked at each other and raised their eyebrows in disdain. They curled their lips and whispered to Sangwon, "This person is really shameless." I've seen it for myself. She's even more shameless than our family's second madam. Don't speak nonsense. Gu Fengzi pouted and glared at her outside the door. They weren't the only ones in this courtyard. Luya stuck out her tongue and made a face. Sangwon couldn't help but smile. Compared to her second aunt, Gu Fengzi was indeed more shameless. Her words weren't wrong. Soon, Gu Fengzi sent Yen Chun's servant to send over the roster of Ning Garden servants. Miss Cousin-in-law told me to help young mistress take a look. If there's anything young mistress doesn't understand, she can ask me. If there's anything young mistress needs, she can also tell me. I'll definitely tell Miss Cousin-in-law. Yen Chun's servant said to Sangwon without blinking, as if she was Miss Cousin-in-law's spokesperson. When she said this, Xing Ji, Hong Yi, and the other servants of Ning Garden held their breaths and listened expressionlessly. They were waiting to see what Sangwon would do. There's no rush. You can go back first. I'll stay and take a look. Sangwon smiled. Miss Cousin-in-law said that my job today is to stay and listen to young mistress's questions and orders. Since that's the case, I'll just wait at the side. Young mistress, please take your time. Yen Chun's servant smiled. Her words were flawless, but she didn't move a single step. Obviously, she didn't take Sangwon seriously. Everyone could tell what she meant by calling her Miss Cousin-in-law. If they were outside of Ning Garden, Sangwon could just turn a blind eye to it and let it pass. But in Ning Garden, in front of so many maidservants who served her, if she were to let her do as she pleased, she was afraid that Ning Garden would not have peace in the future. It would be better to change its name to Yes and No Garden. I don't need you to serve me. Since that's the case, you can go home and rest for a day. Regarding Ning Garden, we'll talk about it when Mama Li comes back. There's no need to trouble sister-in-law Yen. Sangwon's eyes turned cold as she stared at her and said coldly. Yen Chun's servant didn't expect that the gentle and soft-spoken young mistress, who was also a new daughter-in-law, would not give her any face. She immediately blushed and felt embarrassed. Relying on Gu Fengzi's support and knowing that Sangwon really couldn't do anything to her, she still refused to leave. She simply smiled and said shamelessly, "Young mistress, Xingji, Luya. Send sister-in-law Yen out." Sangwon saw that she really didn't take her words seriously. Her face immediately darkened and her tone became stern. She clearly gave the order. Xingji naturally couldn't ignore it. Luya was even more eager to hear it. The two of them agreed and went forward to say, "Sister-in-law Yen, please." Without any explanation, they pushed Yen Chun's servant out. All the servant girls silently exchanged glances. There was a limit to the new young mistress's good temper. Unexpectedly, less than an hour after Yen Chun's servant left, Mama Li, who was recuperating at home, actually came back to Ning Garden with a trembling hand holding a little servant girl. Hearing the servant girl's report, Sangwon, who was flipping through the roster in the room, was shocked. She hurriedly got up and personally went out to greet them. Mama Li was Shi Fengju's wet nurse and had a very deep relationship with Shi Fengju. Shi Fengju was very filial to her, so Sangwon didn't dare to slight this bodhisattva. "Why is Mama here? Your body hasn't fully recovered yet. You should rest at home for a few more days." Sangwon smiled and personally went to help her. Mama Li hurriedly avoided her and only allowed Xingji to help her. She said, "Io, young mistress, don't be like this. Which famous brand does old slave belong to? He's worthy of young mistress's treatment. Your young master's wet nurse, so you're Wan Nyong's elder. You're worthy of it." Sangwon smiled and didn't go forward to help her. When she saw her sit down, she personally took the tea that the servant girl brought and offered it to her. Mama Li saw this and hurriedly leaned over to take it. "Young mistress is too polite. Old slave feels very apologetic." She sighed regretfully. "It's a pity that this old woman is old and useless. I actually missed young master and young mistress's big day. Ai, what a pity, what a pity." Mama Li truly felt regretful that she wasn't able to attend Shi Fengju's wedding and see him marry his wife. Young Master and Wan Nyang are extremely grateful that you're concerned about them. Young Master will be very happy if you take care of your body. Sang Wan said with a smile. Mama Li couldn't help but laugh heartily. Young Mistress really knows how to talk. It's so comforting to hear. Wan Nyang is just speaking the truth. That's the truth. Mama Li smiled and said, I heard that young Mistress has taken over Ning Garden. There are a lot of things that you have to deal with. That's how it should be. From now on, young Master will have to rely on young Mistress to take care of him. Mama Li's expression darkened and a trace of loneliness flashed across her eyes. Her words were full of vicissitudes of life. Sang Wan quivered and secretly jumped in fright. Before she married into the family, Ning Garden was basically managed by Mama Li. No wonder Mammy Li came here in such a hurry regardless of her illness. Needless to say, it must be that Yen Chun's family, or rather, Gu Fengzi, who said something to Mama Li. Sang Wan was so angry that her body began to tremble slightly. Gu Fengzi pressed on, not even giving her a chance to breathe. Nanny, you must be joking. Wan Nyang is new here and doesn't even have a complete group of people. How can she manage anything? She just wants to familiarize herself with the faces of everyone in this courtyard. Everything in this courtyard is smooth and proper. Wan Nyang doesn't see anything that needs to be cleaned up. Why don't Nanny teach Wan Nyang? Sang Wan quickly smiled and said, Then again, this isn't something that needs to be rushed. It won't be too late to talk about it when Nanny's body recovers and comes back. Wan Nyang is young and inexperienced. She will have to trouble you to teach her in the future. It's best if you don't think that Wan Nyang is stupid. Mama Li's eyes flashed and said in surprise, This? Young Mistress means that you will let this old woman come back in the future? Of course. Sang Wan said curiously, You are young Master's wet nurse. As long as you are willing, you will naturally be welcome back. Sang Wan smiled embarrassedly and said, Wan Nyang is thick-skinned. I still want to ask you to teach Wan Nyang more. You have taken care of young Master since he was young. You are very clear about his temperament and likes. Chapter 22. Of course. Young Mistress, if you don't mind me being long-winded, I'll definitely tell you everything I know. Mama Li couldn't help but chuckle in joy. She almost said, This Ning Garden is managed by this old woman. Not only young Master, there's nothing in this courtyard that this old woman doesn't know. But on second thought, if she said that, wouldn't it make her seem petty when she rushed over the moment she heard that Shi Fengwan was taking over Ning Garden? It was as if she was afraid that Shi Fengwan would snatch away her authority. Of course, she had indeed come with such resentment in her heart. That was because her neighbor's granddaughter had heard someone say that the new young mistress was going to clean up Ning Garden and set up new rules for her to hear. She was so angry that she had rushed over. Unexpectedly, that was not the case at all. Mama Li was a shrewd person. On second thought, she understood that she had fallen for someone's scheme to sow discord. Thinking about it again, she knew that this matter was definitely related to Gu Fengzi. After all, if she were to embarrass young Mistress, the only one who would benefit would be Gu Fengzi. That vixen. Mama Li gritted her teeth and sized up the gentle Sang Wan. A strong sense of responsibility arose in her heart. How could young Mistress be a match for that vixen with her temperament? She would have to worry about her in the future. Young Master was a child that she had brought up single-handedly. She definitely couldn't watch him be ruined in the hands of that vixen. Young Master's wife should be like young Mistress, gentle and virtuous, steady and well-mannered. Only with such looks and character would she be worthy of young Master. Unlike that vixen, who only knew how to act coquettishly and only cared about herself. She didn't know how to think about young Master and would throw tantrums at him for no reason. The Shi family had a large business and young Master was already busy and tired outside. Now that he was home, he should be enjoying life comfortably and not trying his best to please and flatter a woman. Just thinking about Gu Fengzi's usual behavior, Mama Li felt a stomach full of anger. However, the eldest young Master was completely under her control. She was both distressed and angry, but there was nothing she could do. Really? Wan Nyang would like to thank you in advance, Sangwon said with surprise and joy. She naturally knew that Mama Lee was protective of her children. With Mama Lee's help, many things would be easier. Young mistress, you're too polite. Mama Lee chuckled. She thought for a while and sighed. Young mistress has always treated me as one of her own, so I can't help but say whatever I want. Eldest young master is a good person. Young mistress, you'll know as time passes. You just have to take care of the eldest young master. When you're free, go sit with the eldest madam and chat with her. You don't have to pay attention to anything else for the time being. You have to be diligent. Sometimes, you can't just look at things on the surface. In this household, in her 2 lifetimes, Nanny Lee was the first person who treated her well and spoke to her from the bottom of her heart. Sangwon suddenly had mixed feelings. Her nose turned sour and her eyes became slightly moist. Wan Nyang will remember Mama's words. Thank you for your advice. Sangwon blinked her moist eyes and nodded slightly at Mama Lee. Mama Lee did not want to say anything bad about Gu Fengzi in front of everyone. Moreover, she was not familiar with Sangwon to that extent yet, so she did not want to say anything more. In any case, her meaning was already very clear. In this residence, the only people important to eldest young master and eldest madam were the eldest young master and the eldest madam. She could only rely on and trust these 2 people. If eldest madam was still bewitched by other people's face, then she was stupid and was not necessarily worthy of her wholeheartedly help. Hopefully, she would not disappoint her. Mama Lee's body was not well to begin with. Now that she had come with a burst of anger, she had calmed down and said a few more words, showing some fatigue. Sangwon ordered the servants to brew ginseng tea. Mama, rest well for a while. I'll have someone send Mama back later. Mama, you can rest well. When you're better, tell someone to come over and let me know. I'll have someone pick Mama up. She then asked if she wanted to go into the room and lie down. Old slave is just a servant. How can he be so precious? Mama Lee laughed and drank a few mouthfuls of ginseng tea. After resting for a while, she left. The disturbance disappeared without a trace. Sangwon finally secretly sighed in relief. The next 2 days were peaceful and no one came to find trouble with her. Gu Fengzi was busy with the matters at hand and did not come to provoke her for the time being. With nothing to do, Sangwon grabbed Luya and taught her how to read and read. When she was in the Sang family, Luya served her as her personal maidservant. She more or less knew a few words, but it was very limited. The family's situation was not good. Which girl in the village did not need to do housework when she was sensible? Only the rich could afford to raise a girl in the boudoir. Although her eldest brother doted on her, she still had to take her sister-in-law's feelings into consideration. Her eldest brother firmly forbade her from working in the fields, but she could not pretend that she did not see the housework around the house. Even she was too embarrassed to read books, so how could she care about Luya? But it was different now. Perhaps in the not-too-distant future, she would have to live together with Luya. Reading books could make people understand, regardless of whether they were men or women. When her father was alive, he said so. Her eldest brother and second brother also said so. She also deeply believed in it. Therefore, now that she had the time and the conditions, she had to teach Luya. Who knows, she might even be an assistant in the future. Moreover, it was also good to have something to prevent her from going out. Sangwon was very afraid. She was afraid that Luya would go out and wander around. Then, just like in her previous life, she would no longer belong to her. Young mistress. Young mistress. After breakfast, Sangwon was teaching Luya how to read and read in front of the table that was cleaned up in the side room. Suddenly, a little maidservant with a round face, wearing a silver blue vest and a white silk dress, rushed in. Sangwon looked over and saw that it was Xiao Ke-er, who served her mother-in-law, Wang. Sangwon asked, "What is it?" "Young mistress, you should go quickly. Old mistress is calling for you immediately," Xiao Ke-er said hurriedly. "Mother is calling for me? What's the matter?" Sang Wan heard Wang calling for her and did not dare to neglect. Xiao Kei shook her head. You will know when you get there. Sang Wan nodded her head and tidied up her dress. She then looked at her hair in front of the big bronze mirror to see if her hair was messy. Turning around, she saw Luya with one hand on the table and the other holding a brush while looking up at her. Sang Wan could not help but laugh. She stared at her and said, "Write the 10 words I taught you 20 times each. Also, do you know how to recite the essay I taught you yesterday? I will check it when I come back later." "Yes, young mistress." Luya hung her head dejectedly and stuck out her tongue in dismay. She buried her head and continued to write. "Come with me." Sang Wan smiled and turned to Xing Ji. Xing Ji agreed and supported Sang Wan as she left with Xiao Kei. On the way, a young woman supported by a servant girl walked over. She had a flower hairpin in her hair and was wearing a white coat with red plum blossoms and a red pleated skirt with dark hibiscus patterns. She had a slender waist and held a brocade handkerchief in her hand. When she saw her, she stopped in her tracks. This was the second branch's daughter-in-law, Madame Zhou. Not long after she married into the family, her husband, Shi Erlang, eloped with a brothel prostitute and had not returned. Madame Zhou lived in seclusion. Even in her previous life, Sang Wan had only seen her a few times. In this life, she had not seen her even once after marrying into the family. Sang Wan deliberately paused and slowed down her steps. She glanced at Xing Ji questioningly. "This is second young mistress." Xing Ji hurriedly introduced her to Sang Wan and then went forward with Xiao Kei to greet Madame Zhou. "So it is sister-in-law." Sang Wan nodded and greeted her with a smile. "Eldest sister-in-law." Madame Zhou returned the greeting. After the greeting, Sang Wan casually said with a smile, "Let's chat tomorrow when we are free." Then she hurriedly left. "Eldest sister-in-law, are you going to eldest aunt's place?" Madame Zhou suddenly asked. "Yes, mother is looking for me. I am going over." Mother-in-law enjoyed absolute status and authority in the Fu. Sang Wan did not want to talk to Madame Zhou and hurriedly went over. Madame Zhou's gaze swept over her and there seemed to be a ripple in her eyes. However, she did not say anything else and nodded with a smile. "Then I will not disturb eldest sister-in-law. Eldest sister-in-law, please." She watched as Sang Wan and her servants left before she slowly left. Just as she entered the main courtyard and passed through the hall, Sang Wan heard the crisp and clear laughter of a middle-aged woman. Sang Wan could not help but feel her heart skip a beat. Her footsteps subconsciously slowed down. She did not know where this woman came from. She actually laughed so arrogantly and confidently in front of Wang. A light suddenly flashed through her mind. Sang Wan was so shocked that she tightly clenched the handkerchief in her hand and her face turned pale. If she guessed correctly, this woman should be Madame Zhuang, the enemy of her mother-in-law, Wang. Although the Zhuang family did not have the title of the richest family in Qingzhou, they were still a reputable and influential family. She didn't know what was wrong with Madame Zhuang, but she couldn't see eye to eye with Madame Wang. No matter what, she had to compete with Madame Wang to win or lose. She had to suppress Madame Wang to feel better. In recent years, the competition between the two had become more and more fierce. In the past, they competed over whose family had more shops, whose son was better, whose servant girls were more considerate, whose mother was more loyal, whose garden was bigger and expensive, and so on. Now, it was even worse. They even competed over the first incense stick at Shui Yun Nunnery every month. Sang Wan could not help but be secretly vigilant. She forced herself to be 120% cautious as she slowly walked in. In her previous life, it was Gu Fengzi who used tricks to make her lose face in front of Madame Zhuang. Her mother-in-law was ridiculed by Madame Zhuang, which made her life even worse. She did not expect that Madame Zhuang would come so soon. In this life, who knew what Madame Zhuang would do and what Gu Fengzi had set up for her? Daughter-in-law greets mother. Sang Wan stepped forward and bowed to Wang as she softly said. Wang's expression was obviously startled. Although the displeasure in her eyes was fleeting, it still fell into Sang Wan's eyes. Sang-won could not help but feel a little depressed. She had just appeared and said a few words. Could it be that she had done something wrong? He, come, quickly greet Madame Zhuang. Madame Zhuang is a famous noble lady in Qingzhou. Wang kindly raised her hand and smiled as she introduced her. In front of Madame Zhuang, even if Wang had something in her heart, she would not show it. Of course, she had to show that she was close to her mother-in-law so that Madame Zhuang would not make fun of her. Chapter 23. Yes, Sang-won softly agreed and turned to Madame Zhuang to curtsy. Wan Nyong greets Madame Zhuang. Greetings to Madame Zhuang. Good. Madame Zhuang smiled, but her pair of shining eyes looked at her from head to toe without any scruples. She waved to her and said, Come and sit next to me. You really have a good appearance, gentle and cultured. You are a young lady from a scholarly family. Really, you are different from the young ladies of our family. The last sentence was directed at Wang. Wang Shi forced a smile, but her face was a little stiff. Sang-won really wanted to shut Madame Zhuang's mouth. This woman really wanted to see the world in chaos. She said these words in a strange tone, clearly trying to drive a wedge between her and her daughter-in-law. She was happy, but did she think about other people? There were such people in this world. Obviously, they looked normal, but when they came out of her mouth, they made people not want to listen to them. Hearing it made people feel uncomfortable. Sang-won didn't move. She looked at Wang from the corner of her eyes, obviously asking for permission. Now, she could only take one step at a time. Her only reliance was Wang's thoughts. Only by putting her first could she think of a way to maneuver around. Sure enough, Wang saw that she didn't listen to Madame Zhuang and asked her to make a decision. Her expression softened a bit. She looked at Madame Zhuang proudly and said to Sang-won with a smile, Madame Zhuang is calling you. Go quickly. Yes. Sang-won bowed to Wang again. Then, she walked to Madame Zhuang and sat next to her. You are too careful. How is your mother-in-law so terrible? Even when I call you, I still have to look at her face. Madame Zhuang smiled and held Sang-won's hand. She smiled at Wang. You are really an honest child. Wang was so angry that she couldn't speak. Madame Zhuang almost said that she abused her daughter-in-law. How could Wang take this lying down? However, he had no choice but to accept it. As a daughter-in-law, it is my duty to be filial to my elders. Although Wan Nyang is young and ignorant, I know that I should put my elders first. I don't dare to act on my own accord. Sang-won smiled shyly and said softly. Wang breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly said with a smile, Madame Zhuang is right. Wan Nyang, you are really too honest. I am an elder, and Madame Zhuang is also an elder. You really shouldn't be so careful, lest someone think that I, as a mother-in-law, am petty. Sang-won smiled at Wang and softly answered, Yes. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Madame Zhuang curl her lips in disdain. Sang-won also sighed in her heart. No wonder Madame Zhuang looked down on her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law's level of speech was really not on the same level as Madame Zhuang's. Sang-won could vaguely feel that one of the most important reasons why old Mistress Zhuang liked to compete with her mother-in-law was because her mother-in-law was not as good as old Mistress Zhuang, yet she was able to sit firmly in the position of Qingzhou's first wealthy madam. Madame Zhuang directly ignored Wang's words and only continued Sang-won's words. She smiled at Madame Zhuang and said, People who are educated are indeed different. Look at the words of this little mouth. It is pleasant to hear. Oh, how many books have you read? Why do your hands have calluses? Sang-won gently pulled back her hand and her face couldn't help but heat up. When she was in her maternal family, she did housework every day. She wasn't a young lady who didn't do any household chores. The skin on her hands wasn't white and creamy, so it wasn't surprising that there were calluses. In terms of white and tender, she was afraid that even the Shi family's concubine's daughter, Shi Lian's hands couldn't compare. Madame Zhuang naturally wouldn't be unaware of her family's situation. At this moment, she deliberately said this just to ridicule her. Sang-won felt uncomfortable for a moment. Her nature was aloof and she never thought that working at home was a shameful and laughable thing. Her lips moved and she wanted to say the truth, but on second thought, who knows how many words Madame Zhuang had waiting for her after she said the truth. Why should she ask for a rebuff? Wang's heart had always been uncomfortable with the fact that the Sang family and the Shi family didn't match. According to the Shi family's current wealth, it was not impossible for them to marry a young lady from an official's family. She couldn't say anything that would make Madame Zhuang laugh at Wang. Sang-won gritted her teeth and simply smiled without answering. She took it as a tacit agreement with Madame Zhuang's words. Since Madame Zhuang had said it herself, it was obviously inconvenient for her to refute. Since the person involved didn't object, she secretly rolled her eyes and said, "Thick skin." How could Madame Zhuang be willing to let it go? She rolled her eyes and smiled at Wang. "It's not that I don't like to speak as a younger sister, but Sister Wang, your Shi family is our Qingzhou's wealthiest family. Wan Yang is now your Shi family's eldest daughter-in-law, so why is she dressed so plainly? Look at the material of the clothes, it's not much. The color of the makeup is not smooth and delicate enough, losing half of the beauty's color. The head ornaments are also very ordinary. This shouldn't be this year's new style, right? I say, Sister Wang, it's fortunate that it's me. If others saw this, wouldn't they gossip? I thought that your Shi family was not as good as before. Even the eldest daughter-in-law's clothes are so ordinary." Madame Zhuang's words obviously poked Wang's sore spot. Wang's face didn't look good again. She glared at Sang-won and said, "Who said so?" "Our Shi family is doing well. Our Fengju is very capable, and our Shi family's business is getting better and bigger every year. It's fine if we don't listen to that kind of gossip. Of course, Wan Yang has good clothes, head ornaments, and makeup, but she's used to being lazy and doesn't like to wear them out. Our Shi family is a family that accumulates kindness. We even show kindness to outsiders, so how can we mistreat our own daughter-in-law?" Sang-won remained neutral. No wonder when she stepped in, her mother-in-law's face flashed with displeasure. It was because of this. She then quietly looked at her mother-in-law's clothes. She was wearing a long coat with long sleeves made of cyan and gold, a long coat with a flowery satin embroidered collar, an official green dress with 8 treasures, and a gold peony inlaid with pearls inlaid with red and blue jewels in the middle of her hairbun. She was wearing a golden hairpin inlaid with gold inlaid with mutton fat white jade that gave birth to a child, and a golden hairpin inlaid with red coral. Her collar was tied with 18 jade beads, and her ears were adorned with 8 treasures gold inlaid with gems. She was also wearing a soft, smooth, and delicate mutton fat white jade bracelet on her wrist, and a golden ring inlaid with a ruby the size of a thumb. She was dressed in an incomparably rich and luxurious manner, even more grand, formal, and exquisite than when she served tea that day. She then glanced at old Mistress Zhuang. She wore a red and purple robe with great patterned embroidery, and an indigo and gold embroidered dress. She was also dressed with jewelry and was full of wealth. It turned out that the two of them were at odds the moment they met. One came prepared, and the other was ready. Sang-won then looked at her own attire. She wore a pea-green robe with chrysanthemum embroidery, and a white silk dress without any accessories. Her accessories were also plain and simple. If one were to put it nicely, it was elegant, but if one were to put it bluntly, it was shabby. No wonder her mother-in-law was unhappy. "That's what I said." Old Mistress Zhuang covered her mouth and giggled. The handkerchief in her hand was soft like jade. It was made of heavenly water jade that was hard to buy even with 100 gold. Sister Wang is definitely not such a person, and the Shi family is also not a stingy family. Old Mistress Zhuang said firmly and turned to Sang-won with a smile. "Wan Yang, this is your fault. Why is it not easy for a young daughter-in-law to dress up? It's not like you don't have the qualifications. It's not good to let others misunderstand. Those who don't know might think that your mother-in-law and young Master Feng are stingy. I'm a straightforward person, so Wan Yang, don't be angry. Perhaps I'm wrong, but it's just that you're used to it. Hee, Sister Wang, it's true that marrying a daughter-in-law is really important. Otherwise, if you're not from the same family, it's hard to change your temperament and habits. I've said too much again. Old Mistress Zhuang laughed and spoke at one moment. Her words were directed at Sang-Wan and then turned to Wang. The smile on her face did not diminish, and the sarcasm was not lacking. Listening to old Mistress Zhuang's ridicule and thinking that she did not agree with this marriage, Wang's heart was filled with anger. If not for old Mistress Zhuang, Wang would have already lashed out at Sang-Wan. She lowered her eyes and her eyes flashed. She silently chanted, calm down, poise, poise a few times in her heart and slowly calmed down. She wanted to refute old Mistress Zhuang but did not know how to do so. She forced a smile and said, it's not as serious as you say. Wan Yang, this child, is gentle, virtuous and polite. Ever since she entered the family, she has been very filial to me as her mother-in-law. She's very good. Besides, this marriage was decided by our family's old master when he was still alive. Our old master's foresight, do you still need to say? Otherwise, the position of the richest person in Qingzhou would not belong to our She family. Don't you think so? Old Mistress Zhuang's face stiffened and she smiled awkwardly. Back then, the She family's old master and the Zhuang family's old master worked in the same business. Although their encounters were different, it was inevitable that both families liked to compare with each other. And this comparison between old Mistress Zhuang and Wang had reached a fever pitch. Wang's words could be said to hit the nail on the head. If old Master She's foresight was not good, the position of the richest person in Qingzhou would most likely belong to the Zhuang family. Would the Zhuang family be considered as his defeated opponent? How could the person he chose be wrong? Sang-Wan secretly found it funny. She did not think that her mother-in-law would have a time when she would choke someone to death with her words. She was afraid that old Mistress Zhuang would not be able to live past tonight because of those words. It's all because of Wan Yang's negligence, Sang-Wan hurriedly smiled and said. Wan Yang came in a hurry and did not change her clothes. Old Mistress Zhuang, please don't laugh at me. Please forgive me for my lack of manners. Sister Zhuang is the most magnanimous. How could she be calculative with a younger generation like you? Do not make such a mistake again, lest others misunderstand. Wang said. Yes, thank you mother for your teachings. Wan Yang will remember it. Sang-Wan got up and bowed to Wang. Old Mistress Zhuang was indeed very bothered by Wang's words. Although she did not show it on her face, her heart was stifled. Seeing the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law putting on an act in front of her, she felt even more irritated and laughed. Why don't I see Fengzi? In the past, that child would always be there to join in the fun. Why don't I see her today? No wonder I feel that something is missing. Chapter 24. What a coincidence. Fengzi caught a cold 2 days ago and was feeling unwell. She's currently lying in her room. Otherwise, she would definitely have come to pay her respects. Wang resisted the urge to pull a long face and said with a smile. Sang-Wan, who had a dull expression, quickly raised her eyebrows and glanced at Wang. Gu Fengzi was clearly lively and energetic, so why did Wang say that she was sick? However, it was good that she said so. Otherwise, when Gu Fengzi came, old Mistress Zhuang would definitely stir up trouble again. Sang-Wan did not know that Gu Fengzi was also afraid of old Mistress Zhuang's mouth. She was afraid that old Mistress Zhuang would make things difficult for her, so she simply pretended to be sick and hid outside. Old Mistress Zhuang sneered in her heart. She obviously did not believe it, but she could not question it. With a smile that was not a smile, she said, Sick? Is it serious? This season is neither too hot nor too cold, so it's easy to catch a cold. But then again, if it's a physical illness, then it's fine. But if it's a mental illness, then it's hard to treat. Kiki, isn't that child Fengzi and Shi about the same age? Now that he's married, Fengzi, you should also consider and prepare for her. Year after year, time waits for no one. If one were to compare the previous few sentences, it was clear that she was implying that Gu Fengzi was touched by the scenery. Seeing that her cousin was getting married, she began to feel sorry for herself. Thinking of her uncertain future, she fell ill. To put it bluntly, it was yearning for love. She also accused Wang of being incompetent as a biological aunt for not being willing to consider for an orphan. Old Mistress Zhuang's words were harsh, but it was a pity that she overestimated Wang. Sang Wan understood the hidden meaning, but Wang did not. She was only angry that old Mistress Zhuang had put Shi Fengju and Gu Fengzi together in front of Sang Wan. In the end, the Shi family had let Sang Wan down, so Wang was furious. Wang's embarrassment turned into anger. She couldn't hold back her anger any longer. She smiled coldly and said, "Thank you for your concern. It's just a small cold. It's nothing. I'll be fine in 2 days. When she recovers, I'll bring her to pay respects to you. Little Sister Zhuang, if there's anything good to eat or fun to play with, don't be reluctant to part with it. Oh, I don't know if you have the time. Young Master Zhuang's marriage hasn't been settled yet, right? Hee, young Master Zhuang's standards are high. I wonder which family's young lady will be able to catch his eye." The young Master Zhuang that Wang was talking about was the only son of Master Zhuang and Madame Zhuang, Zhuang Weixian. Like Shi Fengju, Zhuang Weixian was also a business genius. At a young age, he was already in charge of the Zhuang family's hundreds of shops. His temper was stubborn, and he had long declared that the wife he wanted to marry must be pleasing to his eyes. Otherwise, he wouldn't want her even if she was as beautiful as a fairy. Over the past 2 to 3 years, Zhuang Weixian didn't know how many girls Madame Zhuang had introduced to him, but none of them caught Zhuang Weixian's eye. Naturally, this marriage was delayed year after year. Master Zhuang and Madame Zhuang, who were anxious to have a grandchild, were burning with anxiety. However, they couldn't do anything about it. When he was forced into a corner, he simply left Qingzhou to patrol the shops. Once he was gone, half a year had passed. Wang's words once again successfully hit Madame Zhuang's soft spot. Madame Zhuang only felt her vision darken and her head become dizzy. She really didn't look at the almanac when she went out today. Why did she have to cause trouble? All right. When the time comes, I'll hold a banquet. Sister Wang must attend. Bring Wan Nyang along too. It'll be a good time to have some fun. Madame Zhuang smiled, but her heart was filled with hatred. When I get back, the first thing I have to do is to settle Xian Er's marriage. She didn't believe that her son would dare to disobey when his mother threatened him with her life. Of course. Wang smiled. However, in her heart, she thought that she couldn't let Wan Nyong do as she pleased anymore. It was time to train Wan Nyong properly. It was her negligence that made her forget that the Shi family's eldest daughter-in-law wasn't just a woman in the backyard. She still had to socialize with the upper-class women in Qingzhou and socialize with relatives and friends. In the future, there would be many occasions for her to show her face. She must not embarrass the Shi family. Then it's settled. Madame Zhuang got up and left with a smile. She really didn't look at the almanac when she went out today. She came in a hurry and left in a sullen mood. Since when was it her turn to be bullied in front of Wang? After sending Madame Zhuang off and returning to her seat in the hall, Wang's face suddenly turned gloomy. She slammed the coffee table beside her and shouted coldly at Sang Wan, "What's wrong with you? Didn't I tell you to dress up more grandly? Look at yourself." Sang Wan widened her eyes in surprise. In all honesty, when did Xiao K say such a thing? She only said that her mother-in-law asked her to hurry over and that was it. Sang Wan didn't think that Xiao K would dare to hide the truth from her. She opened her mouth to explain but held back. Wang was still in a fit of anger. It was best for her not to open her mouth. The moment she opened her mouth, Wang would be even more disgusted. Sang Wan couldn't talk back to Wang at this moment, but she also couldn't just swallow her anger. Thus, she raised her eyes and glared fiercely at Xiao K, who was serving by the side. She didn't mind being seen by Wang at all. She believed that as long as Wang saw it, she would be suspicious and ask a few questions. Xiao Kei didn't think that Sang Wan would be so bold as to glare at her in front of Wang. She guiltily avoided her gaze and couldn't help but shrink back. As expected, Wang's expression froze. She turned to look at Xiao Kei and scoffed. She stopped scolding Sang Wan and waved her hand, gesturing for her to leave. Even if she could see the clues, as her mother-in-law, there were many things that she couldn't ask in front of Sang Wan. If there really was something else going on, then what was the point of her scolding Sang Wan? Was she in the wrong? Yes, Wan Nyong will take her leave now. Mother, please calm down. Wan Nyong won't dare to do it again. Sang Wan knew when to stop and bowed respectfully to Wang. When Wang saw that she didn't hold any resentment, she felt slightly better. However, she still harumphed stubbornly, "Next time?" "There won't be a next time." "All right, you may leave now." "Yes." Sang Wan bowed gently and turned to leave. "I told you to invite young mistress over. What did you tell her?" Wang immediately glared at Xiao Kei and shouted coldly. Xiao Kei groaned inwardly. This servant. Tell the truth." Wang said coldly, "It's not difficult to figure out the two. If you dare to lie, think about whether you can cover it up or not." Xiao Kei's heart trembled and she was filled with regret. How could she have known that Sang Wan would be so daring? She thought that Sang Wan would have no choice but to suffer in silence. Or, she could not accept it and argue with Wang on the spot. Regardless of the outcome, she could have avoided it. Now, she was the one who bore the brunt of it. This servant deserves to die. This servant deserves to die. Xiao Kei fell to her knees and cried. This servant was in a hurry and was afraid that old Mistress Zhuang would be dissatisfied if she waited for too long. "I only said to invite young mistress over quickly. I forgot what old Mistress Zhuang said. This servant deserves to die. This servant deserves to die. So it's really you, you little wench." Wang spat at Xiao Kei. You look so smart, but you're so useless. You can't even convey a message clearly. I almost wronged Wan Nyong. I'll keep you. And..." Before Wang could finish her sentence, Gu Fengzi walked in leisurely with a handkerchief in her hand. She glanced around and smiled. "Who's so insensible to make Aunt angry again?" "Oh, so it's you, little wench. It wasn't easy for Aunt to be happy, but what did you do now? You've ruined Aunt's health. Can you bear the consequences?" She gently massaged Wang's shoulders and smiled gently. "Aunt, please calm down. It's not worth it to ruin your health because of a little wench. Just treat it as a fight between cats and dogs. Aunt, tell me, let me be the judge." The strength of Gu Fengzi's massage was just right, and Wang Shi could not help but relax her body and lean back to enjoy her service. Hearing Gu Fengzi's gentle persuasion, half of her anger dissipated. Hearing Gu Fengzi's words, she snorted and told Gu Fengzi about the matter. "Tell me, is this lass reliable or not? She can't even convey a message. What's the use of keeping her?" Gu Fengzi was Wang's confidant, so she didn't need to beat around the bush. After listening, she immediately asked, "That Madame Zhuang didn't take advantage of you and didn't say anything, right?" Wang's face unconsciously revealed a smile. Her heart relaxed, and she nodded with a smile. "No. Speaking of which, today was really carefree. That woman has always been unforgiving, but today she went back with a belly full of anger. Ha." Gu Fengzi snorted and said disdainfully, "How can she compare to Aunt? In the past, you were magnanimous and didn't bicker with her." However, she didn't know when to stop and instead came forward. "Aunt, you don't have to be polite with her. Giving her a small lesson is already magnanimous of you." Gu Fengzi's flattery made it seem like Wang was magnanimous. In the past, she didn't bicker with Madame Zhuang, which allowed Madame Zhuang to gain the upper hand. Now that she turned around, Madame Zhuang couldn't stand it. It was obvious that she was inferior to her. Wang obviously enjoyed these words and couldn't help but lift herself up. The smile on her face became even more carefree and comfortable. Gu Fengzi took the opportunity to laugh again. I see that Xiao Ke is usually very clever. Otherwise, Aunt wouldn't have let her pass the message. Why did something go wrong today? It must be unintentional. Aunt, please be magnanimous and forgive her this time. Today, Madame Zhuang didn't gain any advantage. With this as the premise, everything else could be ignored. Wang also didn't care so much about Xiao Ke's mistake. In addition, Gu Fengzi had just praised her magnanimity. She had to be magnanimous on the spot to show that she wasn't lying. Thus, she stared at Xiao Ke and said, "Did you hear that? Seeing that Miss Gu pleaded for you, I'll let you off this time. If there's a next time, the new and old debts will be added together. Nanny Jiang, remember to tell Auntie Wu that she will be stripped of 1 month's salary. You may leave." This was the lightest punishment. If she was really sent out to do heavy work, then she would lose all her face. Xiao Ke quickly kowtowed to express her gratitude and hurriedly got up and left. Gu Fengzi chatted and laughed with Wang Shi for a while. Only when Wang Shi was truly happy did she leave. Gu Fengzi couldn't help but feel depressed. Sangwon wasn't as simple as it seemed. Sangwon left the main courtyard uneasily. The wind blew and she walked for a long distance before she slowly calmed down. Anyway, she had clearly expressed her attitude and Wang had seen it. As for how she would ask Xiao Ke and whether she would have any thoughts about her, it wasn't something she could control. Chapter 25. At least, even if Wang still blamed her, at least she knew that there were other reasons and that it was not her responsibility alone. "Young mistress, you're back." Luya had already finished writing the characters and was holding a book, silently reciting the essay she taught yesterday, looking outside from time to time. Seeing her come in, she hurriedly put down the book and ran up to serve her tea. "You can't sit still anymore?" Sangwon sat down and took the tea, glaring at her. Luya rubbed her hands and smiled embarrassedly. Sangwon knew that she could not be too hasty. It was not something that could be done overnight to change her temperament, so she smiled and shook her head slightly. "Forget it, let's stop here for today. Let me see the characters and put away the book." "Yes." Luya's eyes lit up, and she happily agreed. As if she was afraid that Sangwon would go back on her words, she couldn't wait to take out the characters and spread them out for Sangwon to see as if she was presenting a treasure. "Young mistress, take a look, this servant's writing is good, right? This servant has not been lazy and has written every word." Sangwon chuckled upon hearing her serious words. She flipped through the pages one by one. Some were crooked, while some were tidy. However, they were too tidy, as though they were made up of wooden sticks. One was big, one was small, one was thick, and one was thin. Looking at the entire book, she felt that it was hilarious. "How is it? This servant didn't lie, right?" Luya saw that Sangwon's face was about to burst out laughing, so she asked quite proudly. "It's better than yesterday and the day before." Sangwon smiled and put it aside, saying with a smile, "You're improving day by day, very good." Luya was overjoyed when she heard that. She smiled so widely that her teeth could be seen and her eyes could not be seen. She hurriedly said, "Then, young mistress, please rest. What do you want to eat tonight? This servant will go to the kitchen and tell them." Sangwon couldn't help but sigh inwardly. As the saying goes, it's easier to change mountains and rivers than to change a person's nature. This Luya had always been someone who couldn't stay idle in the Sang clan. It was truly difficult for her to be confined to this small courtyard. As soon as he put down the book, he immediately found an excuse to run out. "Go." Sangwon smiled helplessly. "Don't waste time outside, and don't go anywhere else. Go and come back early." "Yes, this servant understands." Luya agreed and left in a hurry. Sangwon looked up and saw Jida staring at Luya's masterpiece in a daze. Sangwon's lips curled into a smile. Xingji realized that she had lost her composure and hurriedly retracted her gaze. She smiled embarrassedly. "Young mistress. Can you read?" Sang-won asked with a smile. Xing-ji's eyes darkened. She shook her head and forced a smile. This servant is just a servant. How could I have the good fortune to learn how to read? Sang-won smiled and said, That's nothing special. Is Luya not the same as you? He, she can't even compare to you. Xing-ji's heart was filled with hope. Her eyes lit up and she asked in a trembling voice, young mistress, can you also want to learn how to read? Sang-won asked on her behalf. Yes. Young mistress doesn't think this servant is stupid. Please teach this servant. Xing-ji immediately knelt down and kowtowed to Sang-won. She was a top-notch maidservant and was more knowledgeable than the other maidservants. In the past, she had seen how Gu Fengzi was able to help the young master a lot because of her literacy. She could not help but think that if she was literate, would she have a better chance in the future when it came to marriage? If she married, would she be able to help her husband more and receive more respect from her husband? However, she was still a servant in the end and didn't have the right to ask to learn how to read. If she said this, her master might think that she had ulterior motives and was scheming something big, especially since she was serving by the young master's side. If she revealed even the slightest bit of suspicious behavior, Miss Biao would not forgive her. Quickly get up. Sang-won leaned over and helped her up. She smiled and said, This is nothing. It's worthy of you kneeling. If you want, you can learn from Luya every day. Xing-ji was overjoyed when she heard this. She kowtowed to Sang-won again and said happily, This servant thanks young mistress for her grace. Thank you, young mistress. All right. Sang-won smiled and raised her hand. Seeing that Hong Yi was also eager to try, she smiled and said, Do you also want to learn? It's fine if there's one more, but I won't be able to handle any more. The opportunity couldn't be missed. Hong Ye's eyes lit up and she immediately followed suit. She kowtowed to Sang-won and said, Thank you, young mistress. Sang-won nodded and said with a smile, Then it's settled. From tomorrow onwards, you will learn from Luya. It's good that you know a few words and know how to write your own name. That way, you won't be sold off in the future and have to help count the money. The two of them laughed when they heard this. Forget it, Sang-won said with a smile. Since there's nothing to do for half a day, I'll give you half a day off. You can go prepare the 4 treasures of the study. It's fine if you can't prepare them now. Tomorrow you can learn how to read first. Xing-ji and Hong Yi were the daughters of the 3rd generation in the residence. Otherwise, Gu Fengzi wouldn't have allowed them to serve Shi Fengju. It was because the daughters of the family were easy to control. They had to consider their family and face when they did things. To them, preparing a set of the 4 treasures of the study wasn't a difficult matter. The two of them hurriedly said that they would be able to prepare everything by today and hurriedly left to inform their family. Luya came back from the kitchen. When she heard that young mistress had found 2 junior sisters for her, she was happy. Finally, there were people to suffer with her. Sang-won didn't expect that the kitchen was indeed a good place to be well informed. It was no wonder that Luya kept thinking about it. Old Mistress Zhuang's visit and what happened in the main courtyard had already caused the servants in the kitchen to excitedly talk about it. Luya naturally heard about it and came back. When she came back, she told Sang-won everything. She also told her what happened after Sang-won left. Gu Fengzi pleaded for mercy and Xiao Ke was fined 1 month's salary. Sure enough, it was Gu Fengzi again. Sang-won thought to herself, Miss Gu's mouth is really good. Xiao Ke obviously did something bad on purpose. She actually managed to persuade old mistress to forgive her so easily. Luya sighed and was very dissatisfied. When she saw Sang-won glare at her, Luya immediately said, Yes, this servant spoke too much. This servant won't say any more. Xing-ji and Hong Yi were very efficient, or rather, their family members were very efficient. Before dinner, the two of them each came back with a set of 4 treasures of the study. Thus, Sang-won smiled and ordered them to rearrange the room and add 2 more tables. Xing Ji and Hong Yi put their brushes, ink, paper, and inkstone on their respective tables. Their hearts were filled with satisfaction, and they couldn't help but grin. The light in their eyes made Sang-won feel a little embarrassed. "Young mistress, why don't we start tonight?" Hong Yi looked at the prepared brushes, ink, paper, and inkstone. Everything was new. Looking at the pile of white paper, she rubbed her hands and couldn't wait to try it out. Luya heard this and laughed. She glared at her and scolded, "What we? Young mistress has a good temper and you're still going along with it. You don't even look at the time. You don't hurry up and set the table for young mistress and say that we'll start tonight. Do you think young mistress is made of steel and doesn't need to rest? Young mistress and young master are newlyweds." Luya added another sentence in her heart. "How would I have the time to care about you two?" Hong Yi regretted her slip of the tongue and her face immediately turned red. She hurriedly bowed and apologized to Sang-won. "This servant has misspoken. This servant has misspoken. Young mistress, please forgive this servant. This servant doesn't dare to do it again. This servant won't dare to do it again." "All right," Luya was just saying. "However, I'm really a little hungry. Set the table." Sang-won smiled and raised her hand. Hong Ye's words had indeed overstepped her boundaries. Although Sang-won wouldn't punish her for it, she wouldn't be particularly magnanimous. A master was a master, and a servant was a servant. There must be a clear distinction between the two to prevent the servant from bullying the master. After being reborn, she definitely wouldn't be a good person. Yes, this servant will pass the message. Seeing that Sang-won didn't blame her, Hong Yi was greatly relieved. Seeing that she wanted to make amends for her mistake, she hurriedly agreed and turned to leave. Xing Ji and Lu Ye clustered around Sang-won to wash her hands and went to the small reception pavilion that had been converted into a dining room. After thinking for a while, she suggested, "Young mistress, do you want to wait for young master? The business is busy, so young master usually comes back late. He might not deliberately not accompany young mistress." Sang-won said. It was indeed different after promising benefits. In the past, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to get Xing Ji to take the initiative to say a word, let alone say something so valuable. "No need, just set my portion up. We'll talk about it when young master comes back." Sang-won smiled. In any case, she and Shi Fengju were a fake couple. He wasn't her sky, so there was no need for her to serve him. Thinking about it, Shi Fengju wouldn't have any objections if she ate first. Xing Ji and Lu Ye subconsciously looked at each other and agreed in unison. They then prepared the bowls, plates, and spoons, and waited for Hong Yi to bring the dishes back before placing them one by one. There were a total of 4 dishes and 1 soup: pumpkin rice noodles with steamed meat, emerald shrimp, fried eggs, stir-fried lettuce and lily, yam chicken soup, and a large bowl of green fragrant rice. Although she was eating alone, Sang-won didn't feel disappointed or melancholy. Her actions were calm and her expression was calm. Her appetite was quite good. She ate more than half a bowl of rice and drank half a bowl of soup before she stopped. Xing Ji couldn't help but secretly admire her. If she wasn't a truly open-minded and magnanimous person, she definitely wouldn't be able to behave like this. Young mistress was indeed not an ordinary woman. Unfortunately, young master already had Miss Biao in his heart. Young mistress had been wronged. After all, if it was someone else who was treated so coldly by their husband during their marriage, how many people would be able to endure it? Even if they forcefully endured it, their expressions would probably be gloomy and unhappy. "These dishes taste pretty good. Ask someone to bring your meals over. Just eat. If it's not enough, just bring your dishes over." Sang-won smiled and stood up. Lu Ye and Xing Ji thanked her. Hong Yi went out to bring in the food boxes that were filled with their meals. They stood by the table and ate. After the master and servants had finished their dinner, night fell and the room was brightly lit with candles. Perhaps it was because they had the same thing as a bond, but they all felt that the atmosphere today was exceptionally good. No one was willing to ruin this beautiful and warm atmosphere. you're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.